Hello everyone, tonight we're going to delve into a story that speaks to the heart of Zen teachings, a story of humility learning and letting go. It's a tale that reminds us how much we can learn when we empty ourselves of assumptions and preconceived ideas. Have you ever felt like your mind is too full, too cluttered to receive new insights or wisdom? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Feel free to share where you're tuning in from, and the local time. It's always nice to know we're sharing this journey together. Now, let's turn off the lights, turn on the fan for some background music, and enjoy the evening ride together. The sun had just begun to set, casting a warm golden hue over the tranquil Zen monastery nestled high in the mountains. The sound of a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the soft murmur of the nearby stream added to the serene atmosphere. Here, in the heart of this peaceful retreat, a student arrived with a heart full of questions and a mind clouded by curiosity. He had traveled long to meet the Zen master, hoping to find clarity for the many questions that had burdened him for years. He had heard much about Zen, the way of simplicity, mindfulness, and the quest for enlightenment, but still, he found himself lost in the complexity of it all. He wanted to understand the essence of Zen, to learn the path that could lead him to inner peace and wisdom. The Zen master, an elderly man with a calm and serene expression, sat in stillness beneath a tree. His presence was almost ethereal, like a part of the natural world itself, in perfect harmony with the surroundings. The student approached with reverence, his heart racing with anticipation. Master, the student began, his voice soft but full of yearning. I have come to seek your wisdom. Please teach me about Zen and the path to enlightenment. The master looked at him, his eyes calm and unwavering, but did not respond immediately. The silence between them stretched, and the student, unsure of what to make of it, stood waiting. Minutes passed, and the silence continued. At first, the student felt awkward, as if the silence itself was too much to bear. But as the moments lingered, something in him began to shift. Slowly, he started to feel a sense of peace that he had never known before. The silence was not empty, it was full of potential, full of understanding, full of space for something deeper. The Zen master finally spoke, his voice low and gentle, like the wind brushing against the leaves. You are seeking answers, he said, but before you can receive them, you must first empty yourself. The student furrowed his brow, not entirely understanding. Empty myself, he repeated. Yes, the master nodded. You have come here with a mind full of questions, full of ideas, full of expectations. How can you receive the wisdom of Zen if your cup is already full? The student remained silent, pondering the words. He had indeed come with many ideas of what Zen should be, of what enlightenment should look like. His mind, cluttered with expectations, could not grasp the teachings of Zen if he remained so full of preconceptions. The master smiled softly, seeing the student's confusion. Let me show you, he said. With a graceful movement, the master gestured for the student to follow him into a small, humble room. The air was filled with the scent of incense, and the faint sound of the wind outside created a soothing background to their conversation. On a wooden table, the master placed a small teapot and a delicate porcelain cup. Sit, the master instructed, and the student obediently lowered himself onto the floor, folding his legs in the traditional Zen posture. The master poured tea into the cup, his movements slow and deliberate. The student watched closely, curious about the ritual. But then, to his surprise, The master continued pouring, even after the cup had filled to the brim, the tea spilling over and dripping onto the table. The student gasped, unable to hold back a remark. "Master, your cup is full. Why do you continue pouring?" The master paused, the tea still flowing steadily from the pot, and looked at the student with gentle eyes. "Your mind is like this cup," he said, "full of ideas, full of expectations, full of your own thoughts. Until you empty it, it cannot receive anything new. You must first let go of what you already know to make room for what you can learn." The student sat in stunned silence, the realization slowly sinking in. His mind was indeed full of judgments, preconceptions, and a sense of self-importance. How could he ever hope to understand Zen if he was not willing to let go of all that? The master stopped pouring and set the teapot down. "Take this lesson to heart," he said. "You cannot fill a cup that is already full. The same goes for your mind. To learn, you must first empty yourself." For the first time, the student understood. He had been carrying so many assumptions, so many beliefs, that he had left no room for new knowledge. He had been trying to fill his mind with answers without first making space for them. The Zen master rose from his seat and motioned for the student to follow him outside. The sun was now dipping lower in the sky, casting a soft golden light across the landscape. Now the master said, "Go sit by the river and meditate. Clear your mind and let go of everything. Only then can you begin to receive the wisdom you seek." The student nodded silently, feeling both humbled and enlightened by the master's words. He walked slowly to the riverbank, the sound of the flowing water soothing his troubled mind. As he sat there, the teachings of the empty cup resonated deeply within him. He realized that the key to learning, to finding true peace, was not in accumulating knowledge, but in letting go of expectations, letting go of attachments, and allowing himself to be open to what was. The evening air grew cool, and the student sat in stillness, his mind gradually clearing as he let go of his thoughts one by one. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace begin to wash over him, a peace that came not from knowing, but from not knowing. The next morning, the student returned to the Zen master, his mind still filled with the teachings of the empty cup. The cool morning air seemed to hum with potential, as if the world itself was inviting him to let go, to embrace the simplicity of the present moment. The river he had sat by the night before continued to flow with the same peaceful rhythm, unbothered by the distractions of the world. The student felt something stir within him, a sense of quiet understanding that he had never experienced before. He approached the master with a respectful bow, feeling a new sense of openness in his heart. The lesson of the empty cup had taken root in his mind, and he was eager to learn more. He still didn't fully understand the depths of the master's words, but something had shifted inside him. He felt as if the barriers between himself and the world were beginning to dissolve, just as his thoughts were beginning to clear. "Master," the student said, his voice soft yet steady, "I think I understand now. But how do I continue? How do I empty my cup completely?" The Zen master smiled, his eyes twinkling with quiet wisdom. "Ah, that is the question, isn't it?" he replied. "But to answer it, you must first understand that the process is not about force, not about striving or trying to empty yourself all at once. It is about allowing." The student felt a flicker of confusion. "Allowing?" he asked. "Yes," the master said, nodding gently. "You see, the more you try to empty yourself, the more you fill yourself with the idea of emptiness. True emptiness is not something you can grasp or control. It is something that simply happens when you stop holding on. The master paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. When you stop trying so hard, when you stop clinging to your thoughts, your judgments, your desires, that is when the cup becomes truly empty. And only then can you begin to receive. The student stood in silence, reflecting on the master's words. It was hard to imagine letting go so completely, especially when the world seemed so filled with distractions and expectations. Yet there was a quiet truth in the master's words, something that resonated deeply in his heart. You must practice this every day, the master continued. Zen is not something you learn in a single moment, but something you live. It is in every breath, every step, every thought. You can practice it in the way you walk, the way you eat, and yes, even in the way you speak. The student's mind began to open wider, and he felt a sense of deep gratitude for the master's patience. The path to enlightenment wasn't a destination, but a journey that required not just understanding, but constant practice and awareness. Now, the master said, rising to his feet, I want you to practice this today. Take your time. Walk through the garden, sit by the stream, eat your meal slowly, and focus on each action. Do not rush. Let each moment be an opportunity to empty your cup. The student nodded, still feeling a sense of awe and wonder at the simplicity of the task. It seemed almost too easy, too natural. Yet he knew that it was this simplicity that held the key to true understanding. As the student made his way through the monastery's garden, he took slow, deliberate steps. He marveled at the beauty of the flowers, the stillness of the pond, and the quiet hum of nature surrounding him. He tried to let go of his thoughts, to simply be present in each moment without judgment or expectation. As he walked, he noticed the subtle way his thoughts would try to intrude, thoughts of the future, of past regrets, of worries that seemed to swirl in the background of his mind. But each time one of these thoughts appeared, he gently reminded himself to let it go, to return to the present moment. His mind felt like a storm at first, but slowly it began to calm. He walked to the stream, sat down on a smooth stone, and closed his eyes. The sound of the water flowing gently over the rocks was like a lullaby, soothing his restless mind. He focused on his breath, inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly. Each breath felt like a small release, a letting go of tension. The student spent the next several hours practicing mindfulness in the garden, allowing each moment to pass without resistance. He didn't try to force himself to empty his mind. He simply let go of whatever came up. With each passing moment, he felt a little lighter, a little freer, and a little more connected to the world around him. By the time he returned to the Zen master, the student felt a sense of quiet peace within himself. His mind wasn't completely empty, but there was a calmness that hadn't been there before. It was as if he had removed a veil from his eyes, and for the first time he could see things clearly. Master, the student said, bowing respectfully, I practiced today as you said. I tried to let go of my thoughts and be present. I feel different, as though something has shifted within me. The Zen master looked at him with approval, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. Good, he said. That is the beginning of true practice. You see, Zen is not about escaping the world or running away from your thoughts. It is about embracing the world as it is in its fullness without judgment or attachment. It is about seeing clearly and acting with awareness. The student nodded, feeling a deep sense of understanding. The path to Zen was not a linear one. It was not about reaching some distant goal, but about living each moment with presence and mindfulness. "I will continue to practice," the student said, feeling the weight of the commitment he had just made. "I will empty my cup, and I will let go." The master nodded, his expression serene. "Yes, and remember, the cup will never truly be full. It is a journey, and every step is part of the process. Stay patient, stay present, and the wisdom will come in time." The student bowed deeply once more, and as he did, he felt something inside him shift, a deep, silent peace that had been with him all along, waiting to be uncovered. Days passed, and the student continued his practice, though not without moments of doubt. There were days when his mind felt restless, as though it were a chaotic storm refusing to calm. There were times when the distractions of the world felt overwhelming, and the idea of emptying his cup seemed like an impossible task. But he was determined. He had tasted a glimpse of the peace that the master spoke of, and he was unwilling to let go of that sense of possibility. On one particular morning, the student woke early to meditate before the sun had fully risen. The garden was quiet, the only sound being the rustling of leaves in the cool morning breeze. As he sat in stillness, the student's mind, like a storm, began to churn. Thoughts of work, of people of his past, and even worries about the future crept in, just as they had before. His attempts to let go seemed futile, as if the storm would never end, but he remembered the master's words. Let go of trying. Simply be. He stopped focusing on emptying his mind and instead focused on simply being there in the moment. He wasn't trying to get rid of his thoughts. He was simply observing them, watching them drift by like clouds in the sky. At first, this approach felt awkward, but as he continued to practice, he began to notice something profound. The thoughts no longer seemed to control him. Instead, they came and went, with ease like waves on the shore. The storm began to subside, not because he forced it to, but because he allowed it to be. For the first time in his life, the student realized that there was no need to fight his thoughts, to battle them as if they were enemies. He could simply watch them, acknowledge their presence, and let them go without attachment. Later that morning, the student found himself sitting under the old tree where he had first met the master. The place felt sacred now, as though the ground itself carried the weight of the lessons learned. He had walked there in silence, his footsteps slow and deliberate, much like his breathing. When he arrived, the master was already waiting for him. As always, the Zen master's presence seemed both distant and familiar, like a quiet rock in the midst of a stream. The student bowed respectfully, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything the master had taught him thus far. "Master," the student said, "I feel as though something is shifting inside me. My mind is no longer full of the thoughts I used to hold on to so tightly. I am learning to let them go." The master nodded, his eyes warm with approval. "That is good," he said. "But remember, the path is not always smooth. There will be days when you feel that the cup is overflowing once again. That is the nature of the mind. But do not despair. It is all part of the practice." The student sat down beside the master, eager to hear more. "But how do I deal with the days when it feels impossible to let go? When the thoughts come rushing in and I feel overwhelmed?" The master smiled gently. "On such days, simply practice awareness. When the storm comes, do not resist it. Observe it, but do not get caught up in it. The storm will pass, just as all things do. The student listened attentively, his heart growing stiller with each word. It is like watching the clouds in the sky, he mused. They come and go, but the sky remains unaffected. Exactly. The master said, pleased with the student's insight. Your mind is like the sky, and the thoughts are like the clouds. They will appear, but they do not define the sky. In the same way, your thoughts will come, but they do not define you. The student sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on the simplicity of the master's words. It was as if a door had opened within him, allowing him to see the world in a new light. The pressure to control every thought, every feeling, was gone. Instead, he could simply observe and let them pass like a leaf floating on a river. Master, I think I understand now, the student said softly. It's not about trying to control my mind. It's about allowing my mind to be as it is, without judgment or attachment. The Zen master nodded. Precisely. The moment you stop trying so hard to control, you will find peace. When you let go of the desire to change or fix yourself, you will begin to see things as they truly are. This is the path of Zen. The student felt a deep sense of peace wash over him, as if the very earth beneath him had become solid, unshakable. He felt no need to strive or struggle anymore. The more he let go, the more he felt a sense of freedom, like a bird soaring through the sky without the weight of its own wings. As they sat in silence, the student couldn't help but notice how the world around him seemed more vivid. The leaves rustling in the breeze, the gentle hum of the insects, the warmth of the sun on his skin, all of it seemed to come alive in a way he had never noticed before. It was as if, by emptying his mind, he had created space for the world to enter. Master, the student said, looking up at the clear blue sky, it's as though I can see the world with new eyes. The master smiled, his gaze gentle and knowing. That is the essence of Zen. When you empty your cup, you make room for the world to fill you. And when you let go of your attachments, you allow yourself to be fully present with what is. The student bowed deeply to the master, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He knew that this was only the beginning of his journey, but for the first time, he felt that he was on the right path. The road ahead would not always be easy, but with each step, he would continue to empty his cup and make space for the wisdom of the present moment. As the days turned into weeks, the student's understanding of Zen deepened. He continued his practice with a quiet commitment, determined to let go of his attachment to thoughts, judgments, and expectations. Yet even as he made progress, there were moments when he would falter. The thoughts that had once seemed so fleeting now had a stubborn tendency to return, making him question his progress. Were his efforts truly enough? Was he truly emptying his cup, or merely deceiving himself? One morning, as the student sat in meditation near the garden's edge, a particular thought began to nag at him. It was the thought of success, of achieving something, a goal he had always strived for. He realized that his desire to be enlightened, to reach some ideal state of peace, had become another attachment. It was the same desire he had held before, dressed in the clothes of spiritual aspiration. He had been so focused on reaching an end, a destination, that he had forgotten the essence of the journey. His body still, the student gently opened his eyes and gazed at the tranquil water before him. It was as though the ripples on the surface of the pond mirrored the swirling thoughts within his mind. He reached out for the smooth stones near the water's edge, taking one in his hand and rolling it slowly between his fingers. In that moment, a deep realization dawned on him. There was no goal to reach, no state of completion to achieve. Zen was not about finding an answer at the end of the path, but about the practice itself. The Zen master's voice echoed in his mind. The path is the goal. The student smiled softly to himself. He had been so eager to find a destination, to claim victory over his thoughts, that he had overlooked the truth. The journey itself was the teaching. Each step, each breath, each moment of letting go was where the wisdom resided. He felt a quiet joy rising within him, the kind that came not from external achievements, but from the simple act of being present. The weight of ambition lifted from his shoulders, and for the first time, he understood what the master had meant when he spoke of emptiness, not as a void, but as a space for everything to arise and pass freely without clinging. That evening, as the sun began to set in its familiar, graceful descent, the student joined the Zen master by the garden. There, they sat together in silence, watching the colors of the sky shift from warm orange to deep violet. The student felt a profound sense of peace, as though he had finally become one with the world around him. Master, the student said, after some time, his voice calm, I have realized something. I have been so focused on achieving peace, on reaching some place of enlightenment, that I forgot what you said, the path is the goal. The master turned to him, his eyes soft with understanding. Yes, that is the essence of Zen, he replied. The goal is not something outside of yourself, but something you discover within each moment. Peace does not come from striving, but from allowing. You must stop searching for peace and simply allow it to be. The student felt a quiet warmth in his chest, a sense of relief that had been absent for so long. It was as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes, and he could finally see the truth of the master's teachings. He no longer needed to search to chase after peace. It was already here in this very moment, waiting to be embraced. The master smiled, his gaze returning to the sky. Zen is not a destination, he said. It is a way of being, a way of living each moment with complete presence without attachment to the past or the future. In Zen, there is only now. The student nodded deeply, moved by the simplicity of the master's words. The answer had been there all along, hidden in the ordinary moments of life. He had been so caught up in the idea of a future goal that he had failed to notice the quiet peace that had been available to him all along. As the evening settled in, the two of them continued to sit together in stillness, each lost in their own thoughts, but united in the peace of the present moment. The world around them seemed to slow down, as though it too had caught the rhythm of Zen. The birds had quieted, the rustling of the leaves softened, and the gentle flow of the river became a soothing lullaby. For the first time, the student felt fully at home in the world. He had stopped searching for peace because he had come to understand that it was not something to be found. It was something to be experienced in every breath, in every step, in every moment. The cup had been emptied, and in its place there was a vast openness waiting to be filled with the beauty of the world. Master, the student said, after a long pause, I now understand what it means to empty my cup. It is not about forcing things out, but about making space for what is already here. The master nodded. Yes, that is the way. The more you empty, the more room you make for the wisdom of the present moment. It is always here, always flowing, but you must be open to it. The student closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and for the first time, he felt the weight of the world lift completely from his shoulders. There was no striving, no reaching. There was only the peace of being, and so the student sat fully present, fully at peace, knowing that he had taken the first true step on his journey, not towards some distant goal, but into the fullness of the present moment. The days grew warmer as spring began to unfold in the garden, the vibrant colors of blooming flowers bringing a sense of renewal to the monastery. The student's practice continued each day, flowing more effortlessly than the last. His mind had become quieter, less cluttered by thoughts and desires. The storms of his mind had softened, replaced by a calm river of awareness that moved gently without rushing or force. He felt more present, more alive, and yet at the same time, he felt an unfamiliar sense of emptiness, not the void of despair, but the openness that came from releasing his attachments. One morning, the student sat by the pond, his eyes focused on the still water that reflected the bright sky above. His practice had become a part of him, now woven seamlessly into the fabric of his daily life. But as he sat in meditation, a troubling thought emerged like a leaf caught in the current. It was a subtle thought at first, but it quickly grew, filling his mind with doubt. Have I truly emptied my cup? The thought lingered, pulling at his attention. He tried to dismiss it, but it kept returning like a whisper in the wind. What if I am still holding on to something? What if I haven't truly let go? The student opened his eyes, gazing at the stillness of the pond. There was no ripple in the water, no movement to disturb the surface. It was perfect, untouched. And yet in his mind, there was a storm, brewing a storm of self-doubt, the very thing that the master had warned him about. He could feel his attachment to the idea of perfection, to the idea that Zen was something to be attained. Is this the trap of the mind, he thought? Am I clinging to the notion that I am empty, and in doing so, I am not truly empty at all? With a sigh, the student stood up and walked slowly to the Zen master's quarters. He had to ask to understand if this was part of the journey or if he had truly missed something. His steps were steady, but his mind raced with questions. The master was sitting outside in the shade of a large tree when the student arrived. His posture was as calm and composed as ever, his eyes half closed, as if he were at peace with the world itself. The student hesitated for a moment before bowing deeply, showing his respect for the master's presence. "Master," the student said, his voice filled with uncertainty, "I have a question. I feel that my practice is progressing, that I am more present, more at peace. But there is a part of me that wonders, have I truly emptied my cup? Or am I simply fooling myself into thinking that I have?" The Zen master opened his eyes and looked at the student with a soft, knowing gaze. For a moment, there was silence, and the student felt a rush of vulnerability. He feared the master would see his doubt as a weakness, but instead, the master's eyes softened with understanding. "You ask a very important question," the master said, "and the answer is both simple and profound. The mind is like the water in the pond. It is still, but it is easily disturbed by a single pebble. The moment you start to question whether you have emptied your cup, you have already begun to fill it again." The student felt a wave of understanding wash over him. It was true. As soon as he asked if he had emptied his cup, he was already creating an attachment to the idea of emptiness. The question itself was a disturbance in the water. "The problem is not in the question," the master continued, "but in the attachment to the answer. You are attached to the idea of having a perfectly empty cup. But Zen is not about perfection. It is about being present with whatever is. If you cling to the idea of emptiness, you are still clinging. Zen is not about achieving a certain state, but about experiencing each moment as it is without judgment. The student listened intently, the weight of the master's words sinking in. He had been striving for something, an ideal, when Zen itself was about letting go of ideals. It was about accepting the ebb and flow of thoughts, emotions, and experiences without clinging to them. Master, the student asked quietly, "Does this mean that the search for emptiness for peace is itself a form of attachment?" The Zen master nodded, a gentle smile forming on his lips. Exactly. The search for something is the very thing that prevents you from finding it. When you stop searching, you find that peace and emptiness were always here in the present moment. They do not come from striving, but from simply being. The student sat in silence, reflecting on the master's words. He had been so focused on the idea of reaching some perfect state of emptiness that he had missed the truth that had always been in front of him. Peace was not something to be obtained. It was something to be experienced. The master continued, his voice calm and steady. Remember, the more you try to grasp at peace, the further it will slip away. True peace is like the air you breathe. It is always present, but you do not need to hold on to it. It is enough to simply allow it to fill you without forcing it. The student closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He felt the weight of his doubts lift, replaced by a quiet understanding. He didn't need to strive for peace, for emptiness. All he had to do was let go of the need for it, and in doing so, he would find it. The student sat for a long time, his mind quiet and still like the surface of the pond. He realized that Zen was not about the quest for something outside of himself, but about allowing life to unfold without resistance. Each moment was an opportunity to let go, to empty his cup, and to experience the world as it was without expectation or attachment. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light across the garden, the student felt at peace. He was no longer searching for the perfect state, the perfect answer. He had found that the practice itself was the answer. "Thank you, Master," the student said softly, his voice filled with gratitude. "I now understand. Peace is not something to achieve. It is something to allow." The Zen master smiled, his eyes twinkling with quiet wisdom. "Yes, you have understood. Now go and live this truth in each breath, in each step. And remember, the path is always unfolding moment by moment." The student bowed deeply, his heart full of appreciation. As he walked back to the garden, he felt a deep sense of contentment. He was no longer striving for an end. He was simply present, fully alive in the moment. The student's journey through Zen was not one of dramatic transformations or sudden epiphanies, but rather a series of quiet, subtle shifts. Each moment of mindfulness added another layer to his understanding. It was not the grand gestures, but the small acts of presence and attention that were shaping him. In the stillness of his practice, the student began to realize that Zen was not something that could be understood with the mind alone. It was something to be lived, breathed, and experienced in every corner of his life. He continued to practice meditation each day, becoming more comfortable with the ebb and flow of his thoughts. The storm that had once raged in his mind now passed more gently, like clouds drifting across the sky. And when a thought or emotion did arise, he no longer fought it. Instead, he acknowledged it and allowed it to pass, knowing that it was not something to hold on to, but something to observe and release. One morning, as he sat in the garden, the student found himself reflecting on his relationship with the world around him. The flowers in the garden bloomed with quiet grace, each petal unfolding as if it had all the time in the world. The leaves on the trees swayed gently in the breeze, their movements so slow and deliberate like a dance that had been going on for centuries. Everything in nature seemed to be in perfect harmony, flowing without effort, simply being. And then the student thought of his own life. How often had he rushed? How often had he sought after the next thing, the next goal, without truly appreciating the moment in front of him? How often had he filled his mind with worries, regrets, and desires instead of just letting go and being present with what was? He remembered the Zen master's teachings. Zen is not about striving, but about being. The answer, the peace he had been searching for, was not in the future or in some distant goal. It was here now in the quiet moments of life. The practice of Zen was not a way to escape life, but a way to fully engage with it. To see the world clearly, without the fog of expectations clouding his vision. The student rose from his seat and walked slowly through the garden. He noticed the small details, the dew on the grass, the sound of birds chirping in the distance, the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves. For the first time, he felt truly present in the world around him, as if his mind and heart were perfectly aligned with everything he saw and experienced. As he walked, he came upon the Zen master who was sitting under the same tree as before, his eyes closed in meditation. The student approached and bowed respectfully as he had done many times before. The master opened his eyes and smiled as if he had been waiting for him. "Master," the student said, his voice filled with a quiet sense of gratitude, "I feel like something has changed within me. I no longer feel the need to search to strive for something outside of myself. I am learning to simply be, to be present with what is." The master nodded, his expression serene. Yes, that is the essence of Zen. To stop searching for something that is already here, to stop striving for something that you already possess. The peace you seek is not out there in the world, but inside of you, in the stillness of your mind. The student sat down beside the master, the weight of his words sinking in. But how do I stay present? How do I remain in this state of peace, even when life becomes challenging? The master's smile remained gentle and knowing. It is not about trying to hold on to peace, but about allowing it to arise naturally. When challenges come, as they inevitably will do, not resist them. Do not run from them. Simply face them with an open heart and an open mind. Allow them to come and go without attachment or judgment. The student reflected on this, realizing that he had often treated challenges as obstacles, as things to be avoided or conquered. But Zen was not about defeating life's difficulties. It was about accepting them as part of the flow of life. They too were transient, like the thoughts that came and went in his mind. "Master," the student said, his voice soft with realization, "I see now that Zen is not about perfection. It is not about living a life without difficulties, but about living a life in which I can accept those difficulties with grace. It is about allowing life to unfold as it is without trying to control it." The master nodded, his eyes warm. "Yes, you have understood. Zen is not about achieving perfection. It is about accepting the imperfections of life and finding peace within them. The true practice of Zen is in the way you live, not in the way you think you should live." The student sat in silence, letting the words sink in. The truth of the master's teachings felt like a deep, quiet river flowing within him. He was no longer seeking an ideal or a goal. He was no longer fighting against life's natural course. He was simply learning to be with it, to flow with it, and to trust that the answers would come not when he sought them, but when he was ready to receive them. As the sun began to set once again, casting a warm golden light over the garden, the student felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the journey, for the lessons he had learned, and for the peace that was already within him. He bowed once more to the Zen master, his heart full of appreciation. "Thank you, Master, for guiding me on this path. I now understand that Zen is not about escaping life, but about embracing it fully in all its simplicity and complexity." The Zen master smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "Yes, that is the way. Now go and live this truth. Be present with each moment and let the world unfold as it will. Remember, the path is the goal, and the journey is never-ending." The student walked away, slowly, feeling lighter than he ever had before. There was no need for hurry, no need for striving. He was simply present, fully alive in the here and now. And as the evening settled into night, he realized that he had found what he had been searching for all along, not in the future, not in a distant goal, but in the simple act of being in the practice of Zen. The seasons continued their slow, deliberate dance. The spring blooms faded into the warm, lush greens of summer, and the air grew heavy with the scent of ripening fruit. The student had settled into a rhythm of life at the monastery. His days were spent practicing Zen, learning to be fully present with each moment. Meditation walks through the garden, and simple tasks like sweeping the floors or tending to the plants had become opportunities for deepening his practice. Each act, no matter how mundane, was a chance to let go of his attachments and simply be. Yet even as his practice deepened, the student encountered moments when he felt uncertain. Moments when old habits of thought would resurface, and he would question whether he was truly on the right path. It was not uncommon for him to feel that Zen was slipping through his fingers as if it were a delicate butterfly that he could never quite grasp. And so he returned to the master, hoping for guidance. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the monastery, the student approached the Zen master, who was sitting by the garden's edge, gazing at the clouds floating lazily above. "Master," the student said, bowing deeply, "I have been practicing every day, but there are moments when I feel lost, when I wonder if I am truly on the path. Sometimes the peace I feel seems so fragile, so fleeting. How do I maintain it? How do I keep from falling back into the old patterns of thought?" The master looked at him, his gaze soft but steady, and nodded slowly. "Ah, yes," the master said, his voice calm. "You feel the weight of your doubts, don't you? It is a common experience on the Zen path. The mind is like a restless child. It is not easy to tame. But know this: the fact that you feel lost, the fact that you question your practice, is not a sign of failure, but a sign of growth." The student looked puzzled. "A sign of growth," he repeated. "Yes," the master replied. "When you first begin your practice, everything feels new, and there is a sense of excitement, of novelty. But as you continue, you will inevitably encounter moments of doubt and uncertainty. These moments are not obstacles. They are opportunities. They are the moments when you are truly facing your attachments and your fears. It is in these moments that you are given the chance to deepen your practice, to learn what it means to let go, to trust the process." The student sat down beside the master, his mind swirling with the implications of the master's words. So, it's not about avoiding doubt or struggle. Exactly, the master said. Zen is not about seeking a life free from challenges. It is about how you respond to those challenges. When you encounter doubt or confusion, do not resist it. Welcome it, observe it, and let it pass. Like the clouds in the sky, it will eventually move on. The student nodded slowly, the weight of the master's words sinking in. He had been so focused on achieving a state of permanent peace, a state in which there were no doubts, no struggles. But now he understood that peace was not about the absence of difficulty. It was about how he engaged with those difficulties when they arose. It was about accepting the fullness of life with all its ups and downs and finding peace within it. The master continued, his voice gentle. Every time you face doubt or confusion, you have an opportunity to deepen your practice. These moments are not a sign that you are failing. They are a sign that you are growing, that you are learning to let go of your attachments. The key is to not become attached to the doubt itself. It is simply another passing thought, another passing moment. The student sat in silence, contemplating this. He realized that his earlier desire to fix himself, to eliminate all doubts and distractions, had only been another form of attachment. Zen was not about reaching a perfect state. It was about embracing the imperfection of life and learning to be at peace with it. What if I don't know how to let go? The student asked, his voice filled with vulnerability. What if I feel like I am clinging, even when I don't want to? The master smiled softly, a look of compassion in his eyes. It is natural to cling. The mind will always try to hold on to something. But remember, letting go is not about forcing yourself to release something. It is about gently allowing it to fall away when it is no longer needed. When you notice yourself holding on, simply observe it without judgment and allow it to pass. It is not a battle, but a gentle unfolding. The student felt a deep sense of relief at the master's words. Letting go didn't have to be an act of force. It was a process of awareness, of noticing the attachment and simply allowing it to dissipate without struggle. The more he practiced this, the easier it would become to remain present and free from unnecessary burdens. For the first time in a long while, the student felt at peace with the uncertainty of the journey. He no longer needed to have all the answers, and he didn't need to force himself to reach some ideal state. He could simply be trusting that each moment, each breath was enough. The practice of Zen was not about perfection. It was about the willingness to remain present no matter what arose. The master's words echoed in his mind as he walked away, the quiet peace of the garden surrounding him. Life with all its uncertainty was perfect just as it was. There was no need to escape it or fight against it. All that was required was to live it fully in each breath and each step. The student took a deep breath and smiled to himself. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to let go, not as a moment of effort, but as an acceptance of what is. As he walked, he felt the weight of his doubts lift, replaced by the lightness of simply being. The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, he was no longer afraid of it. He was ready to walk it one step at a time, with an open heart and a peaceful mind. The days flowed on like a gentle stream, each one bringing its own lessons and moments of insight. The student's practice continued to evolve, no longer marked by the frenetic desire to achieve something, but by the quiet acceptance of each moment as it came. The garden, the pond, the simple acts of everyday life, each of these became his teachers, revealing the truth of Zen in their stillness and simplicity. One morning, the student found himself walking to the riverbank, a place he had often visited in his early days at the monastery. The sound of the flowing water was soothing, and as he approached, he noticed that the river had changed slightly. The current was stronger than he remembered, the water flowing more quickly as if it were rushing towards something. The student paused, watching the water and thinking about the nature of change. The river had always been a symbol of life for him, a symbol of the constant flow of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. But today, the river seemed different. It was no longer a peaceful stream, but a rushing force pushing forward with an urgency that he had not felt before. The student stood still, contemplating the shift. Was the river simply following its natural course, or was there something deeper being revealed to him? The student sat by the water, the cool breeze brushing against his face, and closed his eyes. In that moment, he became aware of the stillness within him. His mind, once restless and constantly searching, was now calm and present. But the change in the river, the increased rush of the water, reminded him that even in stillness, life moves forward, unrelenting and unstoppable. There was no stopping the current of time, no way to hold back the flow of life. A thought arose. Perhaps Zen is not about avoiding the flow of life, but learning to move with it. This realization settled in his heart, and for the first time, he understood that peace did not mean remaining unchanged or stagnant. Life would continue to flow with all its challenges and uncertainties. The key was not to resist that flow, but to move with it, to be present in every moment as it passed. As the student sat by the river, he felt the subtle shift within him, an acceptance of change, a willingness to embrace the unfolding of life as it came. It was not about finding a way to control the current, but about aligning himself with it, trusting that the river knew its way. The Zen master's teachings echoed in his mind. The path is always unfolding, moment by moment. For so long, the student had tried to find certainty to secure some fixed point of peace. But now he understood that Zen was not about creating an ideal state to hold on to. It was about allowing the flow of life to move through him without attachment or resistance. Peace was found in the present moment, in the surrender to what is. The student stood looking at the rushing water before him, and then began to walk along the river's edge. With each step, he let go of the need to control, to figure things out. He simply walked present with each movement, each breath, each step on the earth. The river flowed beside him, and in that moment, he felt deeply connected to its rhythm. As he walked, he noticed that the rushing current was not something to fear, but something to honor. It was the flow of life itself, moving forward without hesitation. The river didn't question its direction. It simply followed its course. The student smiled softly to himself, realizing that he had spent so much time trying to figure out life, when the truth was that life didn't need to be figured out. It just needed to be lived. When he returned to the monastery later that afternoon, he approached the Zen master, who was seated under the same tree where they had shared many quiet moments together. The student bowed respectfully, and the master looked up with a serene smile. "Master," the student said, his voice calm, but filled with a new understanding. "I have come to realize something important today. The river, which has always symbolized life for me, has changed. It is rushing faster now, more urgently. I used to think that peace meant remaining still, not moving with the flow. But now I understand that Zen is not about resisting the flow of life. It is about moving with it." The master nodded slowly, his eyes warm with approval. Yes, that is the true teaching. Life will always flow forward with or without your consent. You cannot stop it, you cannot control it, but you can choose to move with it, to align yourself with its natural rhythm. When you do this, you find peace, not in the absence of change, but in the acceptance of it. The student sat beside the master, the weight of his words sinking in. He had spent so long trying to find peace by avoiding the flow of life, by resisting the changes that came his way. But now he understood that true peace was found not by stopping the current, but by moving with it, by being present in each moment, no matter how it unfolded. As the evening sun cast a warm glow over the monastery, the student felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come so far on his journey, and yet in many ways he knew that this was only the beginning. The river of life would continue to rush forward, and he would continue to walk with it, step by step, moment by moment, with an open heart and an open mind. The master smiled, his eyes twinkling with quiet wisdom. Now, you have truly understood. The path is never ending, and so long as you remain present with it, you will continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue to find peace. The student nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace within him, knowing that this was the essence of Zen, not to control life, but to live fully within it, accepting every moment as it came with humility, with grace, and with a heart wide open. As the days passed, the student continued to walk the Zen path more effortlessly than ever before. The teachings of the Zen master had seeped deeply into his being, becoming less of something he learned and more of something he lived. Life in all its imperfection had become a beautiful, unfolding a river that he now moved with rather than against. Yet despite the peace he had found, the student was aware of something that still lingered in the background of his mind. It was the question of what it meant to truly live Zen in every moment. While he felt a quiet peace in his meditation and his walks through the garden, there were still moments when he encountered challenges that felt like obstacles. The difficulties of daily life, even the simplest of frustrations, seemed to arise and disturb the stillness that he had worked so hard to cultivate. The student wondered how he could bring the wisdom of Zen into every situation, not just when he was seated in quiet meditation or strolling through the serene garden. One afternoon, as the student was helping with chores around the monastery, he was asked to help carry a heavy load of firewood from the storeroom to the main hall. The task itself was simple enough, but as he carried the burden, he couldn't help but notice the heaviness of the load. It was physically demanding, and the further he walked, the more it seemed to wear on him. He found himself growing tired, wishing that the task would be over. He realized with a slight sense of frustration that he had been looking forward to the task ending so that he could return to the peace of the garden. As he walked, he reflected on his thoughts. Why was he so eager to finish? Why could he not be at peace with the very moment, with the simple act of carrying firewood? Was this not part of Zen too? Wasn't the practice of Zen meant to encompass everything, every moment, every task, every experience? With this thought, the student slowed his pace and stopped for a moment, setting the firewood down by the path. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and allowed himself to be fully present in the task at hand. He noticed the weight of the firewood, the pressure it placed on his shoulders, and yet he also noticed the strength in his body, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the sound of his breath as he exhaled deeply. He wasn't just carrying firewood anymore. He was living in the moment, completely aware of every sensation, every breath. The student smiled to himself. In that moment, he realized that the true challenge of Zen was not just to find peace in the quiet moments, but to bring that same peace into every aspect of life, no matter how mundane or difficult it might seem. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect conditions to practice. It was about practicing in the midst of everything, even when the task was tiring or when the moment seemed less than peaceful. He picked up the firewood again, this time with a greater sense of ease. He moved with the rhythm of the task, without impatience or resistance, allowing his mind to remain calm and open. The weight of the firewood no longer felt like a burden, but a natural part of the flow of life. Every step, every motion, every breath was part of the practice. The student could feel the Zen teachings guiding him, not just in meditation, but in every action, every moment of his life. When he arrived at the hall and set the firewood down, he felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, not from completing the task, but from having been fully present during it. He had learned that Zen was not about avoiding the challenging moments, but about embracing them, allowing them to be as they were, without attachment or resistance. Later that day, the student returned to the Zen master who was sitting under the tree in his usual quiet contemplation. The student bowed respectfully, and the master looked up with a gentle smile, sensing the shift in the student's energy. "Master," the student said today, "as I carried firewood, I realized something important. I used to think that peace was something to be found only in moments of stillness, in meditation, in quiet times. But today, as I walked and carried the firewood, I learned that Zen is not just about those moments. It's about bringing that peace into every task, no matter how small or difficult. It's about being fully present, no matter what you are doing." The Zen master smiled, his eyes full of understanding. "Yes," he said softly, "Zen is not separate from life. It is life itself in all its forms. The practice of Zen is to bring awareness to every moment, whether you are meditating or carrying firewood. There is no distinction between the two. Each moment is an opportunity to be fully alive, fully present." The student nodded, feeling the truth of the master's words resonate deeply within him. He realized that his practice was no longer about finding peace in isolated moments, but about living peace in every moment, no matter what the moment held. It wasn't about seeking the perfect state of stillness, but about accepting the flow of life as it was, and bringing his full awareness to whatever was before him. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the monastery, the student felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come a long way since his first days at the monastery, when he had been full of questions and uncertainty. Now he understood that the path of Zen was not a destination to be reached, but a way of living, a way of being fully present with whatever life brought, whether it was the quiet of the garden or the weight of firewood. The master's voice broke through the student's thoughts. Remember, the master said there is no perfect moment to practice. Every moment is perfect just as it is. When you bring your full attention to it, you bring Zen into your life. The student bowed deeply to the master, his heart full of appreciation. He understood now. The practice was not about waiting for peace to come. It was about bringing peace to every moment, every task, and every experience. Zen was not something separate from life. It was life itself. And with that understanding, the student felt a deep sense of completion, not an ending, but a beginning. The journey of Zen would continue to unfold moment by moment, and he was ready to walk it fully present with an open heart. The student's journey had become one of quiet acceptance. The lessons were no longer confined to the monastery or the garden. They were unfolding with every step, in every breath, and in every action. Zen was no longer a distant concept or something to be achieved, but something to be lived, moment by moment. Even the simplest tasks were now imbued with the wisdom of the practice, and with each passing day, the student felt more connected to the world around him. One early morning, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the student was raking leaves in the monastery's yard. The rhythm of the rake against the ground was a soothing sound, almost meditative in its repetition. The cool morning air caressed his skin, and he could hear the soft murmur of the wind rustling through the trees. It was a peaceful scene, and yet as the student worked, his mind began to wander, as it often did. Thoughts about the past, about what he had learned, and even worries about the future crept in like the small, creeping shadows in the corners of his mind. He paused for a moment, leaning on the rake as he watched the leaves swirling in the wind. The quiet frustration that had been building within him came to the surface. Am I really learning, he thought? Have I truly let go of my attachments, or am I just fooling myself? As soon as the thought arose, the student felt a wave of self-doubt wash over him. The question was like a pebble dropped in a pond, sending ripples through his peace. He had been so focused on living the Zen teachings, but in this moment, he felt uncertain, as though something was still missing. His mind began to churn, and for the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of confusion and frustration. In that moment, the Zen master, as if sensing the student's unrest, appeared quietly at his side. The student didn't notice the master's presence at first, so deep was his immersion in his thoughts. But then the master's voice, calm and steady, broke through the silence. Are you raking leaves, or are you raking your thoughts? The student looked up surprised. The master stood beside him, his face serene, as if he had been watching the student all along. The question hung in the air, simple and direct. The student began feeling a bit embarrassed. I was just raking the leaves. But my mind, it started wandering. I began to wonder if I am truly living Zen or if I'm just pretending. The master smiled gently. The mind is like a leaf on the wind, he said softly. It will blow here and there, but that doesn't mean it is lost. When you rake leaves, are you focused on the rake or on the leaves? When you practice Zen, are you focused on the practice or on the idea of Zen? The student blinked, absorbing the master's words. I see, he said slowly. I've been focused on trying to be Zen, to live Zen, but in doing so, I've been missing the very essence of it. The Zen master nodded. Yes, you have been focused on the idea of Zen rather than the practice itself. Zen is not a concept to be grasped. It is a practice to be lived. It is not something you do. It is something you are. The moment you seek to be Zen, you have already separated yourself from it. The student took a deep breath, a quiet realization settling in his chest. He had been so focused on achieving Zen, on living the perfect life, that he had forgotten the simple truth that Zen was not something he could attain. It was not about living up to an ideal. It was about being present with what was just as it was without striving to change it. The master continued, his voice calm as the morning breeze. When you rake leaves, simply rake the leaves. When you walk, simply walk. When you breathe, simply breathe. Zen is in each moment, not in some far-off goal. It is not something you can possess. It is something you can live. The student felt his body relax, the tension in his shoulders easing. It was so simple, yet so profound. Zen was not a burden to carry, not a state to force. It was the natural flow of life found in every moment, in every action, no matter how ordinary. The master gestured to the leaves that had gathered in the yard. Now let us continue raking. Let us not worry about how we do it, but simply do it. The leaves do not question whether they are worthy of being raked. They simply are. The student nodded, and without another word, he picked up the rake again. This time he focused entirely on the act itself, the motion of the rake through the leaves, the rhythm of the movement, the sound it made as it scraped the ground. His mind was still, his heart open. For the first time, he realized that the task before him was not separate from his practice. Every action, no matter how small or mundane, was an opportunity to practice Zen. As he worked, he noticed how peaceful he felt, how the simple act of raking the leaves brought him into the present moment with no thought of the past or future. He was fully engaged, fully alive in the task. The question of whether he was living Zen seemed irrelevant now. He was simply living, and that was enough. The Zen master watched him for a moment, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. This is the practice, the master said softly, to live fully, without striving, without expectation. To be present, no matter what you are doing. The student continued raking the leaves, feeling the calm and peace settle deeper into his bones. He realized that he had been searching for Zen in the wrong place. It wasn't something that could be found or achieved. It was something that was always present, always available in the simplest of actions. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the student finished raking the last of the leaves. The yard was tidy, the earth bare and smooth as if it had been waiting to be seen. The student stood back and looked at his work, but there was no pride or attachment in the moment. There was only quiet contentment, the peace of simply being. "Thank you, Master," the student said, his voice full of gratitude. "I understand now. Zen is not something to seek, it is something to live. It is in every breath, every step, every moment. When I stop seeking, I will find it." The master smiled, his eyes full of quiet approval. "Yes, you have understood. Now go and live this truth. In every task and every moment, live Zen fully as it is. This is the way." The student bowed deeply, his heart filled with peace. He knew that the path of Zen would continue to unfold before him, and each moment would be a new opportunity to practice. There was no need to search for Zen. It was already here in the simplicity of life waiting to be experienced. As the student continued his practice, life at the monastery unfolded with a quiet consistency. Each day was like a fresh beginning, an opportunity to live with presence and awareness. The student no longer looked for external signs of his progress or sought validation from the master. The Zen path had become his own, shaped by his daily actions and thoughts, by the way he interacted with the world around him. One evening, after a long day of practice, the student sat by the pond, watching the sunset over the still water. The sky was painted in shades of gold and pink, and the air was cool and gentle. It was one of those rare moments when the student felt a deep sense of stillness, as if the entire world had paused just for him. But as he sat there, a thought bubbled up like a stone rising to the surface of a pond. What if this stillness doesn't last? What if I forget to be present tomorrow? The thought lingered for a moment, and then the student realized something profound. Even in the midst of his stillness, even in the quiet peace of the moment, there was a subtle form of attachment. He was attached to the idea of stillness, to the desire to hold on to this peace, to make it permanent. He had learned so much about letting go, but now, in this peaceful moment, he saw that even the pursuit of peace could become a subtle form of attachment. The student closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He felt the weight of his thoughts, and for a moment, he allowed himself to simply observe them. I am attached to the idea of peace, he thought. But peace is not something to be grasped. It is something that is always here in every moment, even in the midst of change and uncertainty. He smiled to himself. The peace he had been seeking was not something that could be caught or held onto. It was not a state to achieve. It was a quality of being something that existed naturally in every moment, even in the restless thoughts of the mind. Peace wasn't something he could control or cling to. It was something he could only allow by letting go of the desire to possess it. Just as the student was about to rise and return to the monastery, the Zen master appeared quietly by his side, as if he had been there all along. The student didn't need to ask. He already knew what the master would say. Master, the student began, I realize that even in this moment of peace, I have been holding on to something, the idea of peace itself. I've been trying to hold on to it to make it permanent, but I see now that peace isn't something to be held. It is something to be allowed to be experienced fully in each moment as it comes. The Zen master nodded, his eyes filled with quiet approval. Yes, he said gently. You have understood. Peace is not something that can be grasped. It is not an object to possess or a goal to attain. It is the natural state of being when we stop striving, stop clinging, and simply allow the world to be as it is. The student felt a deep sense of relief in the master's words. It was as though a weight had been lifted from his heart. He had been so focused on the idea of achieving peace, of holding on to it, that he had missed the truth. Peace was not a destination, but a way of being in the world. It was the quiet acceptance of each moment, no matter what it held. The master continued, his voice soft and steady. When you let go of your attachment to peace, you find that peace is always there, even in the most ordinary moments. It is in the way you breathe, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself in the world. Peace is not found in the absence of challenges, but in how you face them with acceptance, with openness. The student nodded, a sense of deep understanding settling within him. I see now. Peace is not something I can control. It is something I can simply be with without trying to grasp it. The Zen master smiled gently. Exactly. The practice of Zen is not about finding peace in a future moment. It is about being at peace with the present moment, as it is, without resistance or attachment. As the evening light continued to fade, the student sat in silence beside the master. The world around them seemed to slow, as if time itself had become part of their stillness. The student realized that he had been seeking peace in all the wrong places. He had been looking for it outside of himself, as though it were a distant treasure to be found. But now he understood that peace was not something to be found at all. It was something to be realized in the present, in the quiet acceptance of whatever came. The master's voice broke the silence once more. Remember, peace is not about avoiding the storms of life, but about learning to sail through them. Life will always change, and the world will always move forward. But if you remain anchored in the present moment, You will find that you can flow with life without resistance. The student smiled his heart light with understanding. "Thank you, Master," he said softly. "I now see that the practice is not about striving for something outside myself. It is about being fully present with what is letting go of attachment and trusting that peace is already here." The Master nodded, and for a long while they sat in silence together as the last rays of sunlight faded into the horizon. The student no longer felt the need to search for peace. He knew that it was not something to be sought, but something to be lived fully in every moment. And with that understanding, the student stood up, bowed deeply to the Zen master, and began to walk back to the monastery, feeling the calm of the present moment flowing through him. He had come to understand that peace was not a goal to be achieved, but a way of being a practice that unfolded in every breath, every step, and every moment of life. The seasons continued to change, and with each passing day, the student's understanding of Zen deepened. The teachings of the Zen master, simple yet profound, had become a part of him. They were no longer abstract ideas or intellectual concepts. They were the very fabric of his life, woven into every thought, every action, and every moment. It wasn't just the moments of stillness and quiet meditation that carried the essence of Zen. It was every interaction, every conversation, every mundane task. Zen was not something he could separate from his life. It was his life. One morning, as autumn began to settle into the monastery, the student found himself in the kitchen preparing breakfast for the others. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden light across the room. He was chopping vegetables for the morning meal. And as he did, he became acutely aware of the sound of the knife against the cutting board, the smell of the vegetables, the feel of the knife in his hand. Every detail of the task seemed to come alive in a way that it had not before. In the past, he might have rushed through this task, eager to finish and move on to something else. But today, there was no rush. He was fully present, fully engaged in the simple act of chopping vegetables. There was no thought of the past or the future. There was only the knife, the vegetables, and the act itself. It was a moment of complete mindfulness, and in that moment, the student realized something important. Zen was not about achieving a certain state of mind or reaching some distant goal. It was about bringing full awareness to whatever you were doing, no matter how simple or small. Whether he was meditating raking leaves or chopping vegetables, Zen was present in the act itself. It was not a task to be completed, but a moment to be fully lived. As he finished preparing the meal, the student felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not because he had completed the task, but because he had been completely present with it. It was not about the outcome. It was about the process. The meal would be served, and it would nourish those who ate it. But the true nourishment came from the awareness and mindfulness brought to each step of its preparation. The Zen master, as always, appeared quietly by his side. The student looked up, and their eyes met. There was no need for words. The understanding passed between them like a silent transmission. The master nodded in approval, as if he had known exactly what the student was experiencing in that moment. "Master," the student said, his voice filled with a quiet realization, "I now understand. Zen is not just about meditation or quiet moments. It is about being fully present with whatever you are doing in every moment. The peace comes not from the task, but from the awareness with which you approach it." The Zen master smiled softly. "Yes," he said, "Zen is in every moment, not just in the moments of stillness, but in the moments of activity, of engagement with the world. The practice is not about withdrawing from life, but about embracing it fully with awareness and presence. The student felt a profound sense of peace in the master's words. He had spent so much time trying to separate the sacred from the ordinary, but now he understood that there was no separation. The sacred was in everything, in every action, in every moment. Whether it was chopping vegetables, sitting in meditation, or walking through the garden, each moment was an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to bring Zen into his life. Later that day, the student went for a walk in the monastery's garden. The air was crisp, and the leaves on the trees were beginning to turn brilliant shades of red and gold. He walked slowly, breathing in the fresh air, his steps measured and deliberate. There was no hurry, no destination to reach. There was only the walk, the rhythm of his steps, the sound of the leaves crunching beneath his feet. As he walked, the student's mind remained calm, his thoughts flowing gently without attachment. He observed the beauty of the garden, the way the sunlight filtered through the branches, the stillness of the pond reflecting the sky. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony, and he felt deeply connected to it all. He was no longer an observer, but a part of the scene itself. There was no separation between him and the world around him. In that moment, the student realized that the peace he had been seeking had always been within him. It was not something to be found outside of himself, in a particular place or state of mind. It was always present in every moment, in every breath. The key was to stop seeking it, to stop striving for it, and to simply allow it to be. The Zen master's voice echoed in his mind. The path is the goal. The practice is not about finding peace, but about living peace in each moment. The student smiled to himself, feeling a deep sense of contentment. The journey was not about reaching some distant goal, but about living fully in each step, in each breath, in each moment. He no longer needed to search for peace. It was already here, in the simplicity of life itself. As he continued his walk, he felt the weight of his doubts and struggles fall away, replaced by a quiet confidence. Zen was not a destination to be reached, but a way of being, a way of living each moment, with presence, with mindfulness, and with an open heart. When the student returned to the monastery, the Zen master was waiting for him. Their eyes met once again, and in that moment the student felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the master, but to all of life. "Thank you, master," the student said softly. "I now understand that Zen is not something to be achieved or found. It is something to be lived in every moment, in every step." The Zen master nodded, his smile gentle and knowing. "Yes, you have understood. Now go and live this truth. The practice is not in the future, but in the present. Live it fully with awareness, and you will always find peace." The student bowed deeply, his heart full of gratitude. As he walked back to his room, he felt a deep sense of peace within him, knowing that the journey of Zen would continue to unfold with each breath, with each moment, and with each step. The days passed in their usual quiet rhythm. The student's practice, now deeply ingrained in every aspect of his life, felt as natural as breathing. There were no longer any questions about whether he was on the right path. His mind no longer fought the flow of life, and he no longer sought for answers. Instead, he had learned to be present with everything as it came: joy, sorrow, simplicity, complexity. Each experience was an opportunity to practice Zen, an opportunity to embrace the present moment. One chilly morning, while walking through the monastery's gardens, the student paused to watch a small bird perched on a branch. The bird, was hopping from one twig to another, its feathers fluffed against the cool air, its eyes scanning the ground below. The student smiled at the sight. In the stillness of the bird's simple movements, he saw something profound. The bird didn't question its purpose. It didn't wonder if it was doing enough, if it was living perfectly. It simply existed, fully present with the task at hand, finding food, maintaining balance, living in harmony with the world around it. The student couldn't help but reflect. How often had he questioned his own purpose? How often had he thought that he wasn't doing enough, that he wasn't progressing quickly enough on his Zen path? The bird, in its simplicity, showed him a truth that he had known all along, but had failed to fully embrace. Zen was not about striving, about forcing growth or change. It was about being. It was about trusting the process and allowing life to unfold naturally without resistance. As he watched the bird hop gracefully from branch to branch, the student realized that the Zen practice was like that bird's flight. It wasn't about reaching some distant point in the future, some state of perfect peace or enlightenment. It was about the process itself, the practice of being fully present in each moment, fully engaged with life as it was. Every breath, every step, every action was part of the dance of life, and the key was not to control it, but to live it fully, without attachment. The bird flapped its wings and flew off into the sky, and the student stood still, watching it disappear into the distance. A sense of peace settled within him. The bird's flight had reminded him that Zen was not about holding on to something. It was about letting go, allowing the world to unfold in its own way. He turned back toward the monastery, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. The path ahead was clear. It was not about seeking the perfect state of peace or enlightenment, but about living each moment fully with awareness and acceptance. It was not about the destination, but the journey. And every part of the journey, whether it was joy or struggle, simplicity or complexity, was an opportunity to practice Zen. Later that day, as he helped with chores in the kitchen, the student found himself washing the dishes. It was a simple task, one he had done many times before. But today, he noticed something different. He felt the warmth of the water as it flowed over his hands, the smoothness of the dishes as he scrubbed them clean, the rhythmic motion of his hands as they moved with the water. Each moment felt alive with the presence of Zen. There was no hurry, no desire to finish the task. There was only the task itself, the washing, the scrubbing, the rinsing, and in that moment, he was fully engaged with it. He smiled to himself. This was the essence of Zen. Not in the big moments of meditation or quiet reflection, but in the everyday moments, the simple tasks of life. The Zen master had often said, "When you are washing dishes, wash dishes. When you are walking, walk. When you are eating, eat." The student had heard the words many times before, but today they rang true in a way they never had before. Zen was not confined to a meditation cushion or the stillness of the garden. It was in every moment, in every action, no matter how small. After finishing the dishes, the student returned to the Zen master's side, as he often did. The master was seated under the same tree, watching the world unfold in its quiet, unhurried way. The student bowed respectfully, and the master nodded, acknowledging his presence. "Master," the student said, his voice calm and centered. "Today I realized something important. Zen is not just in moments of stillness, but in every part of life. It's in the way I wash the dishes, in the way I walk, in the way I breathe. It's not about seeking peace or enlightenment, but about living each moment fully with presence, and awareness. The Zen master smiled a knowing look in his eyes. "Yes, you have understood," he said. "Zen is not a practice to be confined to a single moment or a single place. It is the practice of being fully present in every moment, in every action, no matter how ordinary. When you live fully, without seeking anything, you find that peace is already here." The student nodded, feeling the depth of the master's words. "I understand now," he said softly. "It's not about seeking or striving for peace. It's about allowing it to be in every moment. The peace comes from being present, from letting go of expectations, and accepting the world as it is." The master's smile deepened. "Yes, and when you accept the world as it is without resistance or judgment, you will find that peace flows naturally, like the river flowing downstream. You cannot force it, but you can allow it. And in doing so, you will live in harmony with the world, with all its joys and sorrows." The student sat beside the master, feeling the profound peace of the moment. It was not a peace that came from achieving something, but a peace that came from letting go, from simply being. As he sat in silence with the master, he realized that this was the essence of Zen. It was not about finding the perfect state of mind or escaping from life's difficulties. It was about embracing life fully, just as it was, and finding peace in every step of the journey. As the sun set behind the trees, casting a soft golden light over the monastery, the student felt at peace. He knew that the path of Zen would continue to unfold moment by moment, and he was ready to walk it with an open heart, fully present in each step. The seasons continued their steady cycle, and with each passing day, the student's awareness grew deeper. The teachings of the Zen master were now an integral part of him, woven into the very fabric of his being. Life had become his practice, and every moment was an opportunity to live with mindfulness, to be present with whatever arose without judgment or resistance. The student no longer felt the need to chase after peace or enlightenment, for he had come to understand that peace was not something to be obtained. It was something that already existed in the present moment, always available, waiting to be embraced. One crisp morning, as the first light of day began to break through the mist, the student walked to the edge of the forest, where the trees stood tall and silent. The air was fresh, the ground covered in dew, and the world felt still, as if holding its breath. The student paused and took in the serenity of the scene, noticing how each leaf, each branch, each blade of grass seemed to be perfectly in place. The world was in harmony, and he felt deeply connected to it. As he stood there, his mind was quiet. But then a thought flickered across his consciousness. What if I am still missing something? What if I haven't fully understood the essence of Zen? The student was not surprised by the thought. Over the course of his practice, he had learned that thoughts would arise, and it was not the thoughts themselves that mattered, but how he responded to them. The question of whether he had fully understood Zen was just another passing thought, another wave on the surface of the pond. He observed it, and just as easily he let it pass. Yet there was something deeper stirring within him. He had been so focused on the simplicity of Zen, on the quiet acceptance of life as it was, that he wondered if there might be something more, a deeper layer of understanding that he had not yet touched. As if answering his unspoken question, the Zen master appeared at his side, walking quietly along the edge of the forest. The student didn't need to speak. The master's presence was enough to calm his mind and open his heart. The student bowed respectfully, and the master nodded in acknowledgement. Master, the student said, his voice steady, but filled with a sense of inquiry. I feel that I am beginning to understand Zen more deeply. but there is still something within me that wonders if I have truly grasped it. I feel as though I may have missed something, some deeper layer of truth. Can you help me understand?" The Zen master looked at him with a serene expression, his eyes calm but piercing. "You are asking about the essence of Zen," he said softly. "But remember, the essence of Zen is not something that can be grasped by the mind. It is not a concept, not an answer. It is a living experience, one that is realized not through understanding, but through being." The student's brow furrowed slightly. "I thought I had been practicing being. I have learned to be present with each moment, to accept life as it is without resistance." The master nodded. "Yes, that is the foundation. But Zen goes deeper than presence. Zen is not about achieving something, not about understanding in the traditional sense. It is about realizing that you are already everything you seek. The essence of Zen is not separate from you, it is you. The moment you start seeking something outside of yourself, you have already missed it." The student paused, the weight of the master's words sinking in. "I see. So Zen is not about striving for some ideal state or external goal. It's about realizing that the peace, the wisdom, the clarity I seek is already within me in this very moment." The Zen master smiled softly, his eyes twinkling with quiet wisdom. "Yes, you have understood. Zen is about returning to the simplicity of being, not because it is easy, but because it is the only truth. You are not separate from life. You are life itself unfolding in each moment. When you stop seeking, when you stop striving for something outside of yourself, you will realize that everything you need is already within you." The student stood in silence, taking in the master's words. The simplicity of it all struck him deeply. For so long he had searched for peace, for enlightenment, for something outside of himself that would give him the answers. But now he saw that Zen was not a destination. It was the realization that everything he had been searching for was already here within him in the present moment. "You have been looking outward," the master continued, "but Zen is about looking inward. It is about seeing that you are already whole, already at peace. There is no need to go anywhere or become anything. You are already who you are meant to be." The student's heart opened with understanding, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time, he realized that Zen was not a pursuit, it was an experience, a way of being. The peace he had been seeking, the understanding he had longed for, was already present. All he had to do was let go of his search and embrace the simplicity of the moment. "Thank you, Master," the student said softly, his voice filled with reverence. "I see now that I have been seeking something outside of myself. But Zen is not about seeking, it is about being. It is about realizing that everything I need is already here." The Zen master nodded, his gaze filled with quiet approval. "Yes, that is the truth. Now live this truth. Be present with whatever arises and know that you are already whole. There is nothing more to seek, for you have found what you were searching for." As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden light across the landscape, the student stood with the master, both of them silent in the presence of the moment. The world around them seemed to glow with the simple, profound truth that had just been revealed. The student knew that this was not the end of his journey, but the beginning of something new, a deeper understanding of the simplicity of Zen, and the realization that peace was not something to be sought, but something to be lived. And so, with an open heart and a quiet mind, the student continued on the path, fully present in each step, knowing that he had already arrived just as he was. The student continued his journey, his practice deepening in ways that words could scarcely express. Each moment unfolded with a new sense of clarity and ease, as though he were seeing the world for the first time. The simplicity of life, once filled with distractions and complications, now appeared as a beautiful, intricate dance where every moment was a brushstroke in the masterpiece of existence. There was no longer any sense of struggle, no need to prove himself or attain some distant goal. Zen had become less of a concept to understand and more of a natural way of living. Every task, whether it was cleaning the monastery's floors, cooking a meal, or walking in the garden, was an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to be fully engaged in the present moment. The student no longer had to remind himself to be present. It came effortlessly, like breathing. One day, while walking along the edge of the forest, the student was struck by a thought. It wasn't the kind of thought that swirled with anxiety or worry. Rather, it was a quiet, reflective realization. What if Zen is not just about peace or mindfulness? What if it is about seeing the world with new eyes, without the filters of judgment or expectation? The idea sat with him. And as he continued his walk, he began to notice things he had never really paid attention to before. The rustling of leaves in the trees, the soft chirping of a bird in the distance, the way the sunlight filtered through the branches, each detail seemed to stand out more vivid and clear than ever. It was as though the world had opened up to him in a new way, each element of nature speaking to him in its own language. The student stopped and looked at a small flower growing near the path. It was an unassuming flower, delicate with soft petals, but nothing extraordinary. And yet, in that moment, it appeared to him as something miraculous. The way the petals folded against the gentle breeze, the subtle play of color, as the sunlight touched them, it was as if he were seeing the flower for the first time, with full awareness and without the distractions of his usual thoughts. He understood, with quiet clarity, that this flower, this simple, humble flower, was a perfect example of the Zen truth. It was whole, complete, without needing to become anything other than what it was. As he stood there, the Zen master approached, walking slowly along the same path. The student bowed respectfully, and the master stopped beside him, following his gaze to the flower. "You see it, don't you?" The master said, his voice gentle but deep with wisdom. The student nodded, still in awe of the flower's beauty. "Yes, master. I see it now, as if for the first time. It's as though I'm seeing the world with new eyes." The Zen master smiled softly. That is the essence of Zen, to see the world as it is, without the filters of judgment, without the attachment to expectations. We often look at things and miss their true beauty because we are caught up in our thoughts and desires. Zen allows us to see with clarity, to experience the world without the interference of our concepts. The student felt a deep resonance in the master's words. For so long, he had been trapped in his own mind, seeing the world through the lens of his judgments and expectations. But now, he saw that Zen was not about changing the world. It was about changing how he saw the world. It was about seeing each moment in its full, unfiltered glory, without clinging to the past or anticipating the future. Master, the student asked softly, "How do I keep this clarity? How do I continue to see the world this way, without falling back into old habits of distraction and judgment?" The master's gaze was steady, filled with quiet understanding. "The clarity you see now is always here, always present," he said. It is not something you need to keep or hold on to. It is a way of being, a way of living in the present moment. When you stop seeking, when you stop trying to control what you see, you will find that the clarity is always there. It is not something to grasp. It is something to allow. The student paused, taking in the master's words. So I do not need to force myself to be clear. I simply need to allow myself to be present with what is. The Zen master nodded. Yes, when you are fully present without judgment or expectation, you see the world as it truly is. The flower, the tree, the sky, they are already perfect. It is only our minds clouded with desires and judgments that obscure the truth. Zen practice is about letting go of the layers that separate you from reality and simply experiencing life as it is. The student stood in quiet contemplation, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over him. The simplicity of the moment, the simplicity of the flower spoke to him in a way that words could not capture. He realized that Zen was not about seeking some distant ideal or striving for perfection. It was about living fully in the present, with an open heart and an open mind, and allowing the world to reveal itself without the filters of judgment. As the day unfolded, the student returned to his work with renewed clarity. There was no need to rush, no need to struggle. He was fully engaged in each task, whether it was cleaning the kitchen or tending to the garden. Each moment became an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to see the world with new eyes, to experience life as it was. That evening, as the student sat in meditation, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come to understand that Zen was not a distant goal, but a way of being in the world. The peace he had sought had always been here within him, waiting to be embraced. It was not about achieving anything. It was about letting go, about being present with what was. When the Zen master entered the room, the student looked up, his heart filled with quiet joy. The master nodded as if he could feel the student's shift. Without saying a word, the master sat down beside him, and together they meditated in silence. The student understood that there was no need for further words. The practice of Zen was already unfolding in every breath, every step, and every moment. As the days continued their steady progression, the student began to notice the subtle changes in himself. His mind, once restless and cluttered with doubts and worries, had become quieter, more at ease. The world around him had not changed. Nature continued to unfold its seasons. The sun rose and set, the wind blew through the trees, but the student saw it all differently now. He no longer rushed through life, no longer tried to grasp at fleeting moments. Each moment, whether ordinary or extraordinary, was enough. Each moment was an opportunity to practice Zen. One morning, as he walked through the garden, the student came across a small, weathered stone half buried in the soil. It had been there for as long as he could remember, a seemingly insignificant object among the many plants and trees that grew there. But today, as he stood before it, he felt drawn to the stone in a way he hadn't before. Its surface was rough and pitted, worn down by years of weathering. It wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense, but there was a simplicity and rawness to it that felt profound. He bent down and gently brushed the soil away, revealing the full shape of the stone. For a moment, he simply looked at it, feeling a quiet appreciation for its existence. The stone had been shaped by time, by nature, and yet it remained unchanged in its essential nature. It was solid, grounded, unpretentious. It had no desire to be anything other than what it was. The student smiled to himself, realizing that this stone was a perfect reflection of his Zen practice. Like the stone, He had been shaped by time, by his experiences, by his practice, but in his essence, he was the same as he had always been. The stone didn't need to strive for perfection or beauty. It simply existed fully in the present moment. It didn't question its place in the world. It didn't try to become something it wasn't. It just was. As he stood up, the student felt a deep sense of peace settle within him. In his pursuit of Zen, he had spent so much time trying to change, to evolve into something greater. But now he understood that Zen wasn't about becoming something else. It was about being what he already was, whole, complete, and perfectly aligned with the flow of life. Just as the stone didn't need to become anything, neither did he. The Zen master's words echoed in his mind. Zen is not about becoming. It is about being. The student nodded to himself, as if to acknowledge the quiet truth that had just been revealed. He was enough just as he was. There was no need to seek perfection, no need to chase after some ideal. The practice of Zen was about returning to the present moment, accepting life as it was, and living fully in whatever arose. As the student turned to leave the garden, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the simple stone, for the peace that had come from letting go of his need to change. Gratitude for the Zen path, which had shown him that true peace came from acceptance, from simply being present with what was. Later that afternoon, the student sat down beside the Zen master, who was once again sitting under the old tree, observing the world around him. The student looked at him for a long moment, and then spoke. "Master," he began, his voice steady, "I think I understand something important today. Zen is not about becoming someone else. It's not about changing or striving to be perfect. It's about accepting who I am just as I am, and being fully present in each moment. Like the stone in the garden, I don't need to change. I just need to be." The Zen master smiled softly, a quiet approval in his eyes. "Yes, you have understood. Zen is not about transforming yourself into something better. It is about seeing clearly, being present, and accepting what is. When you let go of the need to become, you realize that you are already whole." The student sat beside the master, feeling a deep sense of peace wash over him. He no longer felt the need to search for something outside of himself. The practice of Zen was not about seeking perfection or enlightenment. It was about living fully in the moment, embracing whatever came with openness and acceptance. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the monastery, the student closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He no longer needed to search for answers. The answers were already within him, in every breath, in every step, in every moment. "Thank you, Master," the student said softly, his heart full of appreciation. "I understand now. Zen is about being present with what is not striving for what could be. It is about accepting myself and the world as they are, and in doing so, finding peace." The Zen master nodded, his smile quiet but knowing. "Yes. Now go and live this truth. Let go of the need to become and simply be. In each moment, in each breath, live fully with acceptance and peace." The student bowed deeply to the master, feeling the depth of his words settle within him. He knew that the path of Zen would continue to unfold in each moment, and he was ready to walk it with an open heart, fully present, fully alive. As the evening sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle overhead, the student walked back to his room, a deep sense of peace within him. There was no destination, no goal to reach only the journey unfolding in each moment. The student's life at the monastery had reached a new phase of simplicity. There were no more questions about the nature of Zen, no more searching for answers. His life had become a fluid practice, a dance of mindfulness in the rhythm of daily activities. He no longer approached Zen as a task to be completed, but as a way of living, flowing seamlessly into each moment without resistance. One crisp morning, the student stood at the edge of the garden, gazing out at the rising sun. The first rays of light stretched across the sky, painting everything in a soft golden hue. The air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and leaves, and the world felt fresh, as if awakening from a long rest. The student inhaled deeply, his breath steady and calm, and he felt the peace of the moment settle into his body. For a brief moment, the thought occurred to him that this feeling, this peace was fleeting. But just as quickly, he let the thought pass. He realized that Zen was not about holding on to moments of peace. It was about allowing each moment to unfold without attachment. Whether the moment was one of peace, joy, sorrow, or challenge, it was simply part of the flow of life. The Zen master's teachings on impermanence echoed in his mind. Nothing lasts forever, and that is the beauty of it. The moment you grasp at something, it slips away. But when you let go, you find freedom. The student smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the master's words. He no longer feared the transient nature of life. He understood that each moment, no matter how fleeting, was precious in its own right. It didn't need to be permanent or perfect. It just needed to be experienced. As he walked deeper into the garden, the student noticed how the plants had grown and changed over the seasons. The flowers that had bloomed in spring had long since faded, giving way to the rich hues of autumn. The leaves on the trees had turned brilliant shades of red, yellow, and orange, and some had already begun to fall to the ground, leaving the branches bare. He stopped beside a tree and knelt down to observe the fallen leaves. They were dry now, their once vibrant colors muted by time, their edges curled and brittle. The student picked one up and held it in his hand, feeling the delicate texture of the leaf. In that moment, he realized that this leaf, like every moment of his life, was impermanent. It had once been fresh and full of life, but now it was fading, returning to the earth. Yet even in its dying state, it was still beautiful, still a part of the cycle of life. The Zen master had taught him that everything in life, every thought, every feeling, every moment was impermanent, and yet it was all part of the same whole. Nothing was wasted. Even in decay, there was life. Even in death, there was rebirth. The student rose to his feet and looked around the garden. Everything was in flux, yet everything was in harmony. The flowers bloomed, then withered. The leaves grew, then fell. The seasons came and went, and in all of it, there was a quiet beauty, a natural order that required no force or striving to maintain it. It simply was. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the stillness within himself. In that moment, he understood that Zen was not about resisting the natural flow of life. It was about embracing it, accepting each moment as it came without attachment or judgment. The garden, the falling leaves, the rising sun, they were all part of the same dance, the same unfolding of life, and he was a part of it too. The Zen master's voice broke through his thoughts. "You see it now," the master said softly, as if he had been watching the student all along. Zen is not about finding peace in one moment and holding on to it. It is about finding peace in every moment even in the impermanence of life. Everything changes, and that is its beauty. When you let go of the need to control, when you stop clinging to what was or what could be, you find that peace is always with you in each breath and each step. The student turned to face the master, feeling a deep sense of understanding. "I see, Master," he said softly. Zen is not about trying to hold on to the moments that bring peace or joy. It is about accepting the impermanence of life and embracing each moment as it comes without attachment. The Zen master nodded. "Yes, you have understood." The practice is not about avoiding change. It is about flowing with it, allowing it to unfold naturally. When you stop resisting life's changes, you align yourself with the flow of the universe, and you find peace not in perfection, but in the acceptance of imperfection. The student felt a sense of calm wash over him, as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes. He no longer felt the need to seek out peace or hold on to it. He understood that peace was not something to be controlled, but something to be allowed to be experienced fully in each moment, just as it was. As the day wore on, the student continued his practice, bringing mindfulness to each action, each thought, each moment. The peace that had once felt elusive now seemed to be woven into the very fabric of his life. Whether he was walking through the garden, sweeping the floor, or sitting in meditation, each moment was an opportunity to practice Zen, to embrace life as it was. And in that acceptance, in that letting go, he found the freedom he had been searching for. The freedom to live fully, to be present with each moment without the need to control or change it. The freedom to experience life in its entirety with all its beauty, impermanence, and mystery. As the sun set on the horizon, the student felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the Zen master's teachings, for the simplicity of the path, for the moments of peace that had unfolded in his life. And most of all, gratitude for the present moment, which was all he ever truly had. The days continued to pass, each one unfolding with its own unique rhythm. The student, now deeply rooted in the practice of Zen, had found a quiet contentment in the simplicity of life. His days were filled with ordinary tasks: sweeping the floor, gathering firewood, preparing meals. But each of these tasks was an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to be present with whatever arose. There was no longer any need to search for meaning or purpose. He had come to understand that meaning was inherent in the present moment, in each action, in each breath. One afternoon, as the student walked along the path leading into the forest, he noticed how the trees seemed to stand taller, their branches reaching toward the sky. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The student paused for a moment, simply taking in the beauty of the scene. He no longer felt the need to rush or move on to the next task. He was content simply being with the trees, the earth, and the sky. As he walked deeper into the forest, the student's thoughts began to quiet, and he felt a deep sense of peace settling over him. There was no longer any striving, no longing for something beyond the present moment. He had come to realize that Zen was not about escaping from the world or transcending it. It was about being fully engaged with it, accepting it as it was. The forest, the sky, the earth, they were all part of the same flow of life, and he was part of it too. The student sat down beneath a tree, feeling the cool earth beneath him, and closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, allowing the air to fill his lungs, and exhaled slowly, letting go of any tension or distractions. The sound of the wind rustling through the leaves filled his ears, and he felt his body relax, fully present with the natural world around him. In the stillness, the student realized that Zen was not just about being present with nature, but with everything. It was not about finding peace in isolation, but about finding peace in the midst of life in all its complexities and challenges. Whether he was sitting in meditation, working in the garden, or walking through the forest, the practice of Zen was about being fully present with whatever was in front of him, without judgment or attachment. As the student sat in the quiet of the forest, he felt the presence of the Zen master beside him. The master had arrived quietly, as he always did, and the student turned to look at him. There was no need for words. The presence of the master was enough. "Master," the student said softly, "I have come to realize something important. Zen is not about withdrawing from the world or seeking peace in isolation. It is about living fully in each moment, accepting everything as it is. Whether I am meditating, working, or walking through the forest, Zen is in each moment. It is in everything." The Zen master nodded, his eyes gentle but filled with understanding. "Yes, you have understood. Zen is not about escaping life. It is about embracing life fully with all its beauty, impermanence, and uncertainty. When you stop resisting life's flow, when you stop seeking to change it, you find that peace is always present, waiting to be experienced." The student smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace within him. "I see now. Zen is not something I need to find or achieve. It is already here in the present moment. I simply need to let go of my attachment to what I think life should be and accept it as it is." The Zen master smiled softly, his eyes reflecting a quiet wisdom. "Yes, when you accept life as it is without judgment or resistance, you experience the flow of Zen in everything. It is not something you can grasp or control. It is something you live in each moment." The student sat quietly, absorbing the master's words. He had come to understand that Zen was not about a final destination or perfect state of mind. It was about living in harmony with life, as it was in its entirety. Whether it was in moments of stillness or moments of struggle, Zen was present, flowing through every experience. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the forest in soft golden light, the student stood up and bowed to the master. "Thank you, master. I understand now that Zen is not something I can attain. It is a way of being, of accepting life as it is in every moment." The Zen master nodded, his smile serene. "Yes, now you have truly understood. Go and live this truth in every step, in every breath, in every moment." With that, the student walked back through the forest, his heart light and full of gratitude. There was no destination to reach, no goal to achieve, only the present moment to be fully lived. He was at peace, not because he had reached some ideal state, but because he had accepted the flow of life in all its beauty and imperfection. As he walked, he realized that the journey of Zen was not a path that led to an end. It was an ongoing process of unfolding, of learning to live with presence, acceptance, and compassion. The more he let go of his attachments, the more he found himself at peace, not in the absence of difficulty, but in the acceptance of it. And so, the student continued his practice, fully engaged in each moment, knowing that Zen was not something to be attained, but something to be lived moment by moment with an open heart and a clear mind. The journey of Zen was never ending, and he was ready to walk it fully present with every step. The weeks passed as the student continued to live the practice of Zen in every moment. The teachings of the Zen master had become more than just words. They had become the foundation of his life. The garden, the forest, the simple tasks of daily living, they were all opportunities to practice to live fully in each moment. The student no longer sought a perfect state of mind, nor did he expect life to be free of challenges. He had come to understand that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the ability to be at peace despite it. One evening, as the sun began to set, the student sat outside the monastery, gazing at the sky. The colors of the setting sun were reflected in the calm surface of the nearby pond, and everything seemed to glow with a quiet radiance. It was a moment of profound stillness, and yet the student felt a subtle stirring within him. He realized that for the first time, he was completely at peace with the present moment. There were no questions left, no doubts. The world was as it was, and he was as he was. But as he sat there, another thought arose. It was the question of how to share this peace, this understanding with others. The student had lived for some time now in the monastery, surrounded by the teachings of the Zen master. But what about the world outside? What about the people who had not yet discovered the peace he had found? Was it enough to live in peace? Or was it necessary to share that peace, to help others see the truth of Zen? The Zen master appeared beside him as if on cue. The student bowed, and the master nodded in acknowledgement. There was no need for words, but the student felt the urge to speak. "Master," the student said softly, "I feel at peace, now, truly at peace. But I wonder, what is the role of sharing this peace with others? Is it enough to simply live it, or is there a responsibility to help others find it as well?" The Zen master considered this for a moment, his gaze steady but filled with deep wisdom. "Zen is not something to be forced upon others," he said softly. "It is not a message to be preached or a lesson to be taught. Zen is a way of being, and the most powerful way to share it is through your own presence. When you live fully in each moment, without attachment or judgment, others will naturally be drawn to that peace." The student listened attentively, feeling the truth of the master's words. So it is not about trying to change others or convince them of something. The student said more to himself than to the master. It is about embodying Zen in my own life, and through that offering the peace I have found. The Zen master nodded. Exactly. When you live fully in the present moment with an open heart and a clear mind, you become a mirror for others. They will see the peace in you, and if they are ready, they will begin to see it in themselves. But it is not your responsibility to force that process. Each person must walk their own path. The student sat quietly, absorbing the master's words. He realized that he had been searching for a way to share Zen with others, to show them the truth he had discovered. But now he saw that the most profound way to share it was not through words, but through his actions. When he was fully present with the world, when he embraced each moment with mindfulness and acceptance, that was the most powerful expression of Zen. It was a living example, not a concept to be taught. For the first time, the student understood that Zen was not about convincing others to adopt a certain way of thinking or behaving. It was about living the truth of the present moment, and in doing so, allowing others to discover that truth for themselves when they were ready. The Zen master smiled as though he knew exactly what the student was thinking. "You have understood," he said softly. "Zen is not a burden to carry. It is a gift to be lived. And when you live it fully without expectation or attachment, You allow others to discover it in their own time. The student felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He had been so focused on the idea of helping others, of showing them the path to peace, that he had missed the simplicity of the answer. The path was not about teaching, it was about living. By embodying Zen in his own life, he was already sharing it with the world. The student stood up, bowing deeply to the Zen master. "Thank you, master. I understand now. The peace I have found is not something to be taught or given. It is something to be lived. And by living it, I can offer it to others." The Zen master's smile deepened his eyes, full of quiet approval. "Yes, you have understood. Now go and live fully. The world does not need more words. It needs more presence. Be present with each moment, and you will share Zen in the most profound way." As the student walked back to the monastery, the evening air felt warmer, the world more vibrant. He felt no need to search for anything. The answer had always been within him. Zen was not about achieving or sharing in the traditional sense. It was about living it fully in every moment, without expectation or attachment. Each moment was enough. And in that enoughness, the student realized that peace was not something he needed to find or offer. It was something that was always present, waiting to be experienced and shared simply by being fully alive. And so, the journey of Zen continued unfolding moment by moment, with no end, no goal, just the simple act of being. The student's understanding of Zen had evolved into something deeper, quieter. He no longer sought peace or enlightenment. They were simply present, embedded in each action, in each breath. His life had become an ongoing practice, a natural unfolding of mindfulness, simplicity, and acceptance. Yet as time went on, he began to notice how his understanding deepened through the small, seemingly insignificant moments. One afternoon, while sitting near the monastery's entrance, he saw a young novice struggling to carry a large bundle of firewood. The load was clearly too heavy for him, and the student could see the frustration building in the novice's eyes. Without thinking, the student stood up and walked over to offer his help. "Let me assist you," the student said softly, taking part of the bundle from the novice's arms. The novice, startled, at first looked at him with wide eyes, but soon nodded in gratitude. Together, they walked toward the storage shed, the student moving with ease, while the novice took small, careful steps behind him. As they walked, the student noticed how the novice's body seemed tense, his steps hurried and stiff. The student, remembering his own past struggles with impatience, quietly asked, "Are you trying to get to the shed as quickly as possible?" The novice nodded, breath quick. "Yes, I want to finish quickly so I can do the next task. I don't want to waste time." The student smiled, sensing the underlying tension of hurriedness in the novice's words. But what if in rushing, we miss the beauty of the present moment? The task is the moment. We don't need to hurry to the next thing. Zen is not in reaching the shed faster. It's in carrying the firewood with full awareness. The novice looked at him puzzled as they continued their walk. The student observed the tension in the young monk's shoulders and added, "Zen is in the act, not the outcome. When you let go of rushing, you open yourself to peace. Feel the weight of the firewood. Notice how your body moves, how your breath flows. Don't focus on the destination. Focus on the steps, the way you carry the load with ease." The novice nodded his steps, slowing, though still uncertain. The student walked in sync with him, and after a few moments, the young monk seemed to settle, his body less tense, his pace steadier. They reached the shed quietly, without a rush. The student placed the firewood inside, and the novice followed suit. "Thank you for your help." The novice said, his voice calmer than when they had started. "I understand now. I was rushing because I thought there was something to accomplish. But Zen isn't about accomplishing. It's about being present with what's right in front of us." The student nodded, a quiet satisfaction settling within him. Exactly. Every moment, every action is a gift. If we are always looking ahead, we miss the richness of now. Later that evening, as the student reflected on the interaction, he realized that this simple exchange had reminded him of an essential truth. Zen was not just about being present for oneself. It was also about sharing that presence with others, showing them how to live fully in each moment. By helping the novice carry the firewood, he had not just lightened the load physically, but had also shared with him the deeper lesson of mindfulness in everyday tasks. The Zen master had taught him many things, but perhaps the most important lesson was how to be fully present in life, to accept each moment, no matter how small or ordinary, with complete awareness and peace. It was this lesson that the student now shared with the novice. That evening, the student sat beneath the same old tree where he had spent many silent hours contemplating the path of Zen. The sky was darkening, and the stars began to twinkle above. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the stillness of the moment. He thought about his own journey, the long road of practice, the doubts, the moments of clarity, and the quiet wisdom that had unfolded within him. He realized that his path had been one of letting go, of shedding the layers of attachment and expectation that had once clouded his vision. The more he let go, the more peace and clarity came naturally. There was no need to force anything. Life, like the firewood he had carried earlier, was not a task to be rushed or completed. It was an opportunity to live with full attention, with mindful presence. The Zen master's voice echoed gently in his mind. To live, Zen is to live in each moment. To breathe, to walk, to speak, all are opportunities to practice mindfulness. You do not have to search for Zen. It is already here, in everything you do. The student smiled to himself, feeling the deep truth of those words. There was nothing more to seek. Zen was in the way. He lived his life in the way he responded to each moment, no matter how ordinary. There was peace in simply being present. As the evening settled into night, the student felt a deep sense of contentment. He had no destination to reach. There were no further goals, no more searching. The path of Zen was not a journey to an end. It was a way of being unfolding in every moment, naturally and effortlessly. He closed his eyes, taking another deep breath, and for the first time in his journey, he felt complete. He did not need to strive to search or to achieve. All that was required was to live fully with awareness in each moment. And so he sat in peace, present with the now, knowing that this moment, just like every other, was perfect as it was. The days grew shorter as winter began to make its presence known at the monastery. The once vibrant garden was now quiet, its branches bare and its flowers gone. The world seemed to slow down with the seasons, and the student felt a deep sense of harmony in this change. He had learned so much from the Zen master, yet the more he practiced, the more he realized there was always more to learn, always another layer to uncover. One cold morning, the student woke before dawn and made his way to the meditation hall. The ground was crisp underfoot, and a light frost covered the earth, sparkling in the early light. The air was still and silent, as if the world was waiting for the sun to rise. The student sat in his usual spot, his posture relaxed yet alert. He closed his eyes and began his practice, focusing on his breath, allowing each inhale and exhale to deepen his awareness. As he sat there, a thought arose. What if I am missing something? What if there is still something I have not fully understood? The thought wasn't overwhelming, but it lingered in the back of his mind, quiet but persistent. He had come so far in his practice, yet sometimes it seemed that the deeper he went, the more questions arose. Was he truly living Zen, or was he just fooling himself? Was there still something beyond the peace he had come to embrace? The student shifted slightly, adjusting his position. He was no longer attached to the thought, but it continued to stir gently in his mind. What is missing? The sound of footsteps broke his reverie, and he opened his eyes to see the Zen master quietly entering the hall. The master bowed in silence and sat beside him. No words were exchanged, but the student could feel the presence of the master beside him. The Zen master's stillness, his calmness, was a powerful reminder of the peace the student sought to embody in his life. The student waited, knowing that the master would speak when the time was right. After a while, the master finally spoke, his voice soft, but carrying a deep wisdom. "You wonder if something is missing, don't you?" the master said. The student's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, master. I have been practicing, but sometimes it feels like there is still something I have not fully grasped. I feel like I am close, but..." The Zen master smiled gently, his eyes filled with quiet understanding. Zen is not a problem to be solved, nor is it a question to be answered. It is a way of being. You are not missing anything, for there is nothing to seek. The more you look for something beyond the present moment, the further you move away from the truth. Zen is not found through striving or seeking. It is found when you simply allow yourself to be right here, right now. The student listened intently, feeling the weight of the master's words. "But master, I sometimes feel as though I am still searching for something," the student confessed. "I have learned to be present, to accept the impermanence of life. But is there not some deeper understanding I should reach? Something beyond the simplicity of living in the moment?" The master chuckled softly, his voice calm and steady. "You are still searching for the idea of Zen, the ideal of Zen. But Zen is not an ideal. It is the very thing you are living right now, the very act of being present in this moment. You are not incomplete, and you are not missing anything. The peace you seek is already within you, in every breath, every step, and every action." The student sat in silence, feeling the weight of the master's words sink into his heart. He had been so focused on finding a deeper meaning, a more profound understanding, that he had overlooked the truth that was always right in front of him. Zen was not a destination, not an ideal to be attained. It was a way of living, a way of being fully present with what was. The master continued, his voice as gentle as the morning breeze. "In each moment, you are living Zen. When you stop seeking, you will find that there is nothing more to understand. You are already whole, already at peace. The practice is not about finding something new. It is about seeing what is already here." The student's heart softened, and a sense of deep peace began to settle within him. He realized that he had been searching for something outside of himself, something beyond the present moment. But Zen was not about finding peace in the future. It was about embracing the peace that was already here in the simplicity of each breath, in the quiet stillness of the present. As the Zen master sat beside him in silence, the student closed his eyes once more. He took a deep breath, letting go of the lingering question that had been plaguing his mind. In that moment, he realized that the search for something more was itself an obstacle to peace. There was nothing to find, nothing to seek. There was only the present moment, the reality of life as it was unfolding naturally. He felt a quiet sense of relief wash over him, as if the burden of searching had been lifted from his shoulders. There was no more striving, no more seeking. There was only the act of being fully and completely in each moment. As the light of dawn filled the room, the student opened his eyes and looked around. The world outside was still, the air crisp and cool, the first rays of sunlight illuminating the ground. He felt a deep connection to everything around him, a sense of oneness with the world. There was no separation between him and the world. There was only the flow of life unfolding as it always had. The Zen master stood, and the student followed his lead. The two of them walked in silence side by side, not towards any destination, but simply walking together, present in each step. When they reached the garden, the Zen master turned to the student and smiled. Remember, there is nothing to seek. There is only the present moment unfolding as it is. The student nodded, a quiet smile spreading across his face. He had found peace not in the pursuit of something external, but in the acceptance of what was. The journey was not about seeking, but about allowing. And in that allowing, he found that peace was already here. As the student continued his path, he knew that he was not alone. Zen was not a solitary journey, but a shared experience, one that unfolded in each moment, in every breath. And with that understanding, he walked forward, fully present, fully alive. As the seasons continued to change, the student's practice deepened in a way that was both subtle and profound. There was no longer any striving, no longer any questions about the path or the destination. Zen had become his life, not something separate from it. And every moment, no matter how ordinary, became an opportunity for mindfulness. Whether he was sitting in meditation, walking through the garden, or carrying firewood, he was fully present in the act itself, without needing to judge it or rush through it. One morning, as winter settled in and the air grew colder, the student found himself standing outside the monastery, watching the frost form delicate patterns on the ground. The world was still and quiet, the only sounds being the soft rustling of the trees in the wind and the distant call of birds. The student felt a deep sense of gratitude for the simple beauty of the moment. It was a reminder that peace wasn't something he needed to chase or control. It was already here in the natural flow of life. The Zen master approached quietly, as always, and stood beside the student without a word. The two of them stood there in silence, side by side, observing the stillness of the world around them. There was no need for conversation. In the presence of the master, the student knew that words were unnecessary. The peace they both shared was beyond language. After a while, the Zen master spoke, his voice calm and steady. The peace you feel now, the stillness, is always here. It is not bound by time or circumstance. It is not something you need to search for. You are experiencing it now, simply by being present with what is. The student nodded, absorbing the master's words. He had come to understand this truth deeply. The peace that had once seemed so elusive was not something to be found in a future moment or a distant place. It was already present, always available, if only he allowed himself to be still enough to notice it. The Zen master continued, his eyes watching the frost as it shimmered in the early light. You have learned that Zen is not a goal to be reached. It is a way of being. Every moment, every breath is an opportunity to practice, not in the grand gestures, but in the small, quiet moments. The student thought about the years of his practice. He had once believed that Zen was something to be achieved, that there was a destination to reach, a state of mind to attain. But now he understood that Zen was not about achieving anything. It was about living fully in the present, embracing each moment with awareness and acceptance. Whether in the quiet of meditation or in the hustle of daily tasks, Zen was always there, in every moment, waiting to be lived. You have come to understand the heart of Zen, the master said, his voice filled with warmth. The practice is not about avoiding life's challenges or striving for perfection. It is about being present with whatever arises without resistance or attachment. It is about embracing life as it is. The student felt a wave of gratitude fill his chest. He had spent so much of his life searching, striving, and questioning. But now he knew that the answer was not in the future, not in some ideal state of being. It was in the present moment, in the simple act of being fully alive without striving to become anything other than what he already was. The master turned to face him, his eyes kind but firm. Remember, Zen is not a destination. It is a way of being, a way of living each moment with awareness and presence. You do not need to seek it. You need only to be. The student nodded deeply, a soft smile on his face. He had finally understood that peace was not a far-off goal. It was the natural state of being when one let go of attachment, judgment, and the need to control. Peace was present in every breath, every step, every moment. The Zen master gave a small smile as though pleased with the student's realization. Now go and live this truth. Let each moment be your teacher, and let your life be your practice. There is nothing to seek, nothing to attain. There is only this moment unfolding as it is. As the master's words settled in his heart, the student felt a quiet joy arise within him. There was no longer a sense of pressure, no need to reach a particular destination. Zen was not something to achieve, but something to live fully in each moment. The two of them stood in silence, watching the frost melt as the sun rose higher in the sky. The world was still and beautiful, and the student felt deeply connected to it. There was no separation between himself and the world around him. Everything was part of the same flow, and he was a part of it. As the student began to walk back to the monastery, he realized that Zen was not about seeking something outside of himself. It was about embracing the present moment with all its simplicity and imperfection. It was about being fully engaged with life, not in a quest for something more, but in the recognition that everything was already complete. And so the student continued on the path, not seeking an end, but living each moment fully. His practice was not about perfection. It was about presence. With each step, he was at peace. With each breath, he was alive. The path of Zen continued to unfold for the student, but now there was no sense of striving, no need to look ahead. His life had become a seamless practice where each moment was filled with presence. He no longer felt like he was walking towards something, he was simply walking. Every step, every action was part of the practice of being fully alive, fully engaged with the world as it was. One afternoon, while walking through the forest, the student encountered a deer standing quietly by the edge of the path. The deer's large, gentle eyes met his, and for a long moment, they simply stood there, watching each other. The student felt an overwhelming sense of connection with the animal, as if they were both part of the same natural rhythm. The deer did not hurry, did not question its place in the world. It was simply being in the present moment, just as the student was. As he continued his walk, the student reflected on the encounter. It had been such a simple moment, yet it had filled him with a profound sense of peace. He realized that Zen was not just about being present with people or tasks. It was about being present with everything, with all of life in its simplicity and beauty. The deer had been a perfect example of this truth. It was not trying to be anything other than what it was. It was simply existing fully and completely in the present moment. Later that evening, as the student sat in meditation, he reflected on his practice. He no longer felt the need to search for something more to reach for a deeper understanding. Zen was not a goal to be attained. It was a way of living a way of being fully present in each moment. The practice was not about forcing peace or striving for enlightenment. It was about letting go of the need to control and simply allowing life to unfold as it was. In his practice, the student began to notice a shift. There was a growing sense of ease, as if he were no longer fighting against the flow of life, but moving with it in harmony. There was no need to struggle or strive. Every moment was enough. The breath, the thoughts, the sensations, they all came and went like waves on the shore, and he simply allowed them to be. The Zen master's voice echoed in his mind. Zen is not about doing. It is about being. And in that moment, the student understood that the peace he had been searching for was not something to be found in the future or in a distant goal. It was right here, in the present, in the simplicity of each breath. The more he let go of his attachments to past and future, the more he was able to experience the fullness of life as it was. The next day, the student went to the kitchen to help prepare a meal for the monks. As he chopped vegetables, he was keenly aware of each movement, the feel of the knife in his hand, the sound of the chopping, the colors of the vegetables. The task was simple, but it was a moment to be fully present. There was no rush, no desire to finish quickly. There was only the act of chopping, the awareness of each motion, and the peace that came with it. Later, while walking through the garden, the student saw the same deer again. This time, it was grazing peacefully under the shade of a tree. The student stood still watching the animal, and a sense of gratitude filled his heart. He realized that the deer, like everything in nature, was a living expression of Zen. It was not concerned with anything beyond the present moment. It did not strive or worry about the future. It simply was. In that moment, the student realized that this was the heart of Zen, to simply be. He no longer felt the need to analyze or understand everything. There was nothing to seek, nothing to attain. There was only life unfolding, and he was a part of it. He smiled to himself, feeling a deep sense of peace. When the Zen master appeared beside him, the student shared his realization. "Master," he said, "I've come to understand that Zen is not about seeking or striving. It's about being fully present with what is. Whether it's a deer in the garden or a simple task in the kitchen, Zen is found in the simplicity of life." The Zen master smiled, his eyes filled with quiet approval. "Yes, you have understood. The practice is not in reaching some distant point, but in living fully in each moment. When you stop seeking you find that everything you need is already here in the present. The student nodded, feeling the truth of the master's words resonate within him. He had spent so much of his life searching for something outside of himself. But now he understood that everything he had been searching for, peace, contentment, clarity, was already present right here in the simplicity of the present moment. As the days passed, the student continued to live this truth, bringing mindfulness to every action, every thought, every breath. He no longer rushed through life trying to get somewhere. He simply moved with it, embracing each moment with open arms, without attachment, without judgment. Each moment, no matter how simple, became an opportunity to practice Zen. And with each moment, he found that peace was not something he had to attain. It was something that was already within him, always available, waiting to be lived. As the sun set over the monastery one evening, the student stood in the garden gazing at the sky. The world was still the colors of the sunset glowing softly. He realized that the peace he had been seeking was not in the future, not in some distant goal. It was right here in this moment. All he had to do was let go of his need to strive and simply be. With a deep breath, the student closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the setting sun on his skin. He was at peace, not because he had reached a destination, but because he had fully embraced the present moment. Zen was not a goal to be attained, but a way of living unfolding in every breath, every step, every moment. And so the student continued his journey, fully present, fully alive, with no destination, to reach only the path to walk moment by moment with peace and gratitude in his heart. The student's understanding of Zen had become so deeply ingrained in him that it had become inseparable from his very being. There was no longer any need for words, no need for explanations. He lived Zen in every step, every breath, and every action. Each day unfolded naturally, without the weight of expectations or the need to search for meaning. He had come to understand that Zen was not an idea to be grasped, but a reality to be lived. One morning, as he sat by the riverbank, the student watched the water flow gently over the rocks. The sound was soothing, the rhythm of the water, constant and unhurried. He observed how the water moved effortlessly, flowing around obstacles and finding its way forward without resistance. In that moment, the student realized that the river was a perfect metaphor for Zen. It didn't struggle to move, it simply flowed. It didn't seek the destination, it was the journey itself. The student smiled, feeling a deep sense of resonance with the water. Life, like the river, was not something to be controlled or forced. It was something to be experienced fully, moment by moment, without resistance. He had spent so much of his life struggling against the current, trying to control his thoughts, his emotions, his circumstances. But now he understood that peace came when he allowed himself to flow with life, just as the river flowed with ease. As he sat there in silence, the Zen master appeared beside him as if he had known exactly what the student was contemplating. The master sat down without a word, his presence serene and steady. The student turned to the master and said, "Master, I have been thinking about the river, the way it flows without resistance, moving around obstacles, finding its way forward. It seems so effortless, and I realize that this is how Zen is meant to be lived, without resistance, without striving, just moving with life as it comes." The Zen master nodded his eyes, reflecting the stillness of the river. "Yes, you have understood. Zen is like the river. It is not about fighting the current of life, but about moving with it. When you let go of your need to control, when you stop resisting the flow, you find peace in each moment. The student felt a quiet joy rise within him as he absorbed the master's words. "I see now," he said softly. Zen is not about forcing change or trying to control life. It is about allowing life to unfold, embracing each moment with openness without attachment. The Zen master smiled gently. Yes, and when you live in this way, you align yourself with the natural rhythm of life. You are no longer at odds with the world. You flow with it like the river. And in doing so, you find that peace is always present, always available. The student sat quietly, feeling the peaceful flow of the river and the master's words washing over him. There was no destination to reach, no perfect state to attain. Zen was not about perfection, it was about presence. It was about being fully engaged with the world, with each moment, without trying to control it or make it fit into some ideal. The student had come to understand that life, like the river, was perfect in its natural flow. "Master," the student asked after a long pause, "how do I continue to live in this way, without striving, without resistance? How do I stay present in each moment, no matter what life brings?" The Zen master's gaze was steady, his voice calm as he spoke. "The practice is simple. Stop trying to control, stop seeking. Let go of your attachment to outcomes. Be present with whatever arises, whether it is joy, sorrow, peace, or challenge. Life will always flow forward, but if you learn to move with it rather than against it, you will find that each moment is enough." The student nodded, a deep sense of clarity settling within him. He had been seeking peace and meaning in so many places, but now he understood that it wasn't something to be found. It was something to be lived. Every moment, no matter how small, was an opportunity to practice Zen. Every step, every breath, every action was an invitation to be fully present. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light over the river, the student sat in silence, fully immersed in the stillness of the moment. The world around him seemed to glow vibrant and alive, and for the first time, he truly understood that Zen was not about escaping the world. It was about embracing it fully, just as it was. In that moment, the student felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the Zen master's guidance, for the simple beauty of life, and for the peace that was already within him. He realized that the journey of Zen was not a path to an end, it was a way of living. Unfolding naturally, moment by moment, the Zen master stood and gestured for the student to follow. They walked together in silence, side by side, no words necessary. The student knew that this was the essence of Zen, not in the words spoken, but in the shared experience of simply being. And so, the student continued his practice, living each moment, fully moving with the flow of life, and embracing the peace that was always present, just as it was. There was no need to search, no need to strive. There was only the journey unfolding, moment by moment, with an open heart and a clear mind. The student had settled into the quiet rhythm of his life. Each day, he woke with the dawn, practiced mindfulness. In his chores, meditated under the tree, and walked through the monastery grounds with a sense of peaceful awareness. The questions that once lingered in his mind, questions of purpose, of meaning, had faded, replaced by a deep understanding that the journey was in the living, not the seeking. One evening, after a long day of practice, the student walked alone to the edge of the forest where he had often gone for moments of solitude. The wind had picked up, causing the bare trees to sway and creak. There was a chill in the air, and the evening sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, casting a soft glow across the earth. He sat down on the familiar patch of ground, feeling the coolness of the earth beneath him, grounding him in the moment. The quiet of the evening settled around him, and as he sat in stillness, he realized something profound. In the past, he had often looked for the answers to life, believing that if he understood everything, he would finally feel at peace. But now, he understood that peace wasn't in the answers. It wasn't in the accumulation of knowledge or the completion of tasks. It was in the presence of life itself, just as it was. The Zen master's voice echoed softly in his mind. You are already complete. You are already whole. You do not need to become anything. You are. The student smiled, feeling the truth of these words settle deeply within him. There was no need to become something other than what he already was. Zen was not a path to perfection or some idealized version of self. It was about being fully alive, fully present right here and now. He didn't need to strive to search for anything. Life was enough as it was, and so was he. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the student stood feeling the connection between his body and the earth beneath him. He walked back to the monastery with slow, deliberate steps, feeling more at ease than he ever had. The path was not about seeking an end. It was about being present with every step, every breath. When he returned to the monastery, the Zen master was waiting for him by the doorway, a quiet smile on his face. The student bowed respectfully, and the master returned the gesture. Master, the student said softly, I have come to realize that peace is not something I need to search for. It's already here in each moment. I don't need to become anything. I simply need to be. The Zen master nodded, his eyes filled with quiet approval. Yes, you have understood. Zen is not about becoming something or reaching a particular state. It is about living fully in each moment with acceptance and presence. You are not separate from life. You are life itself, unfolding with each breath, with each step. The student felt a deep sense of contentment in the master's words. It wasn't about becoming someone else or achieving something more. It was about embracing life as it was fully without resistance. He had spent so many years searching, and now he understood that the answer had always been within him, in the simplicity of living fully in the present. That evening, as the monks gathered for their evening meal, the student sat quietly reflecting on his journey. He no longer felt the need to prove himself to reach some ideal or distant goal. There was no more striving, no more searching. There was only the practice, and the practice was life itself. The Zen master's teachings had become a part of him, woven into his very being. The student had learned that Zen was not a destination to be reached, but a way of living unfolding in every moment. Whether he was sitting in meditation or eating a simple meal, he was fully present, fully engaged with life, with no need to seek anything beyond what was already here. As he finished his meal, the student felt a deep sense of peace settle within him. There was nothing more to achieve, nothing more to prove. He had arrived not at some distant goal, but at the realization that the journey itself was enough. He didn't need to seek anything outside of himself. The peace, the clarity, and the wisdom were already within him. The Zen master stood and nodded to the student as if to acknowledge the quiet understanding that had blossomed within him. Live fully in each breath, in each step. The journey is not about becoming. It is about being. The student stood as well, bowing deeply to the master. He knew that this was not the end of his journey. It was simply a new beginning. The path of Zen was never-ending, unfolding moment by moment, and he was ready to walk it fully present with an open heart. As the night deepened and the stars filled the sky, the student sat outside, gazing up at the vast expanse above. The universe, in all its mystery and beauty, was part of him just as he was part of it. There was no separation, no distance. Everything was connected, and in that connection, the student felt the peace he had always sought. And in that moment, the student understood Zen was not about seeking or achieving. It was about living, fully being present in each moment and accepting life as it was. There was nothing more to do. There was only this moment, and in this moment, he was complete.